Well, that's a good starter, and I do believe that we have um, a quorum in the house from at least what I can see, and I see Elisha also nodding her head. So with that, I would like to officially call this December 17th uh, Department of Children, Youth, and Families Oversight Board meeting to order. And I want to say welcome to all and hope my neighbors up north are staying dry and being safe, and my folks in my own community in the south are heeding the warnings from the levee breaches and from the water. So just have everyone in. I know in my head and my heart, and I know other board members do as well. It's a terrible thing when we see families that have been impacted by things. I've lived here all my life, and things we see every day sometimes just still blow me away. So I also want to start today by thanking Dr. Marion Harris, and she recently has stepped down from her role as board member and subject matter expert in the area of reducing disparities in child outcomes. And in her time here has made quite a few really positive contributions, and really want to provide a thanks publicly for her time, and also want to wish her well as she moves forward and moves on in her world and in the successes I know that will lie ahead for her. And just want to thank her for her time and her service. Also, just want to kind of set the stage today that we have a number of different things on our agenda. And one of the things is a follow-up, and that is we'll be voting on the draft legislation bill that we discussed last meeting. And we'll be joined by Zach Turner, who is a Senate Democratic Caucus for me and also chairs Human Services, and so has been working with Lisha, myself, and with folks to have the draft and put the draft together. So we'll be here to ask any questions that folks may have on that side of things. Also, we'll hear from Annie Chung, who is the Director of Legal Services at the Legal Council for Youth and Children, sometimes known as LCYC. And she'll be presenting background on House Bill 1227, which is the Keeping Families Together legislation, and Senate Bill 6109, which is the Children and Family Fentanyl Response Bill. And then we'll also provide opportunity for board members to Q&A and dig a little bit deeper in things that may be of interest to them. And then after that, we will have a panel of service providers who are working with families who have had or are at risk for critical incidents. And that panel will be facilitated by board member Katie Byron, and looking forward to hearing from service providers. They also will be presenting, and then we'll have a chance to also ask questions of them as board. So before we dive into all of those things, which I think is going to be a great use of our time, I would like to pass it over to Elisha for roll call.
Thank you so much, Senator Wilson. Good afternoon, everyone. So for the board member roll call, please unmute yourself when I call your name and say present. Let's start. Judge Sharonda Amamilo. Anna Armstrong.
Present.
Hi, Anna. Representative Steve Berquist. Katie Byron.
Present.
Hi, Katie. Justice Bobby Bridge.
Present.
Hello. Senator Leonard Christian.
Present.
Hello, Senator. Representative Tom Dent. I know Representative Dent will be in and out for the first half of the meeting, and then due to a conflict, he'll be unable to attend the second portion. So I'm going to keep moving on. Dr. Ben DeHaan.
Present.
Hello. Pamela Javier. Danielle Johnson.
Present.
Hello, Ruth Kagi.
Present.
Hi. Dr. Diane Levy. Hi. Lois Martin. Tanya McClanahan is going to join as she's able. She's experiencing some weather situation right now. Mary Spruti Garlant.
Present.
Hi, Mary. And then Stacy Williams.
Present.
Hello. Shelley Willis.
Present.
Great. And Senator Claire Wilson.
Present.
Wonderful. So we do have quorum. So we can continue. Now I'd like to request that the board consider approval of the November 20 meeting minutes. Does anyone have any edits or feedback to the minutes? Is there a motion to approve these minutes?
So moved.
Great.
Second.
Wonderful. Thank you, Ruth. So all in favor, please say aye.
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 All opposed, please say nay. Okay, any abstentions? So with that, the minutes are approved and we can move forward to more of the meat of our meeting today. Thanks so much, everyone. So we are going to start off today's meeting discussing the proposed changes to the Oversight Board bill. And what I would like to do is to discuss all the changes as a whole, and then this will be followed by a vote, a roll call vote on the revised bill. So I do want to give you some context. Since our November 20 meeting, when we reviewed the draft changes, since that time, the statute change subcommittee met, and that group was comprised of Justice Bobby Bridge, Representative Dent, Ruth Kagi, Dr. Ben DeHaan, and then co-chair Dr. Diane Levy also attended, as well as Zach Turner. And we met to discuss the bill that was presented at the board meeting, and some changes were made, and I'll be sharing those today. And then I think, Nicholas, if you have a moment, if you could pull up the slides, that would be great. Thank you. Great. And while those are coming up, I just want to start by saying I'm going to give an overview, but please don't hesitate to ask questions at any time or request clarifications of Senator Wilson or Zach Turner, who I'm unsure if he's on.
Yeah, I just sent a text to see if he's jumping, but I'm here too, so I'll take notes if he doesn't jump on quickly.
Okay, that sounds great. Thank you, Senator Wilson. Okay, so draft bill changes. If we could please go to the next slide. Okay, so I'm going to walk through these one by one. The first change that was made this past week when the statute change subcommittee met was removing the inclusion of the DCYF secretary as a non-voting board member. So the bill currently reads, one non-voting representative from DCYF representing the department's executive leadership team other than the secretary. So just want to see if there are any comments about that, any suggestions, feedback on that language. Yes, Senator Wilson.
You know, I know there's been a lot of conversation around how we word and kind of the feeling apparently of board members around perhaps the inability to be honest and open with things with the secretary in the room. But as we look at, you know, other legislation and other boards and such, I just have to really say that I haven't ever seen language that kind of explicitly excludes an agency head. And that traditionally, it may be the leadership, you know, the secretary or a designee. Very rarely would a secretary come to every meeting that lasts 4 hours just because of the nature of their job. But it worries me that we are excluding using a language other than, when the whole goal of our work is to create more of less of an adversarial relationship and more of an accountability relationship, but also a relationship. And so I just have to say that, because language wise, I just worry about this language, as I will say honestly, as it moves through also both chambers, that I think there would be a wonder why not the secretary? And so that's just the thinking and the input I've had. And I was not in the room where the subcommittee chatted about it, so I may be coming at it from a very different place, but I felt like I kind of needed to share that perspective. And I see Mary might have something to share as well. Thanks for giving me some time.
Yes, thank you, Senator Wilson. Mary.
Yeah, I'm also this seems pretty different than how we handle typical agency representation at work groups. I think, as Senator Wilson notes, I think what we typically see in RCW is like secretary or their designee, which gives them, discretion to have someone from their executive leadership team if that was so desired. I am curious about the reasoning. Certainly, members of their executive leadership team are going to be representing the same opinion as the secretary. So I'm not sure the need for this. So anyways, just curious about where this is coming from, more of the reasoning there, and echo some of Senator Wilson's sentiments.
Thank you, Mary. I see Ruth's hand is raised.
Well, this was a very specific concern of Representative Dent's, and I'm sorry he's not here, but also of a few other board members who expressed a concern about how forthright people would be in their comments if the secretary was present. And so that's why it was included. I think, I'm just concerned that Representative Dent, he felt strongly about this. So, but I am also, having reviewed many bills, the language other than the secretary is problematic, and I don't think it should be in there. I think having representing the department's executive leadership team would suffice myself.
Thank you, Ruth. I see Bobby's hand is raised.
Yeah, thank you very much. I think another of the considerations was that I've heard you talk about how this is very different language. Well, having an oversight board, or as we are, well, in the current language, even as we were begun, having the words oversight board is very different than an advisory board and an advisory committee or a work group, which is what Mary was referring to. So we are a different animal, and I think that it justifies a different look at who ought to serve and in what capacity. And I think we ought to also honor the sense of other members themselves about their ability to do their job completely and adequately and honestly. If they are confronting, and I use that term loosely, but they are debating in the same room with the secretary. I think we have made great strides in making sure that this will be a partnership. And so I think that the concern that that it will not be, or that somehow it reflects a relationship of animosity or adversariness, I think is not what's intended. So maybe not the secretary, or other than the secretary language should come out of it. I think that makes sense, because that's not our intent. Our intent is to be able to work with this group, this accountability board, Oversight Board, as we are now, ought to be able to work with openly and honestly in public, which is what these meetings are, as best we could, regardless of who is in the governor's office.
Thank you so much, Justice Bridge. Before I call on the next person, I just want to summarize what I'm hearing from people is that the current language is problematic. And what I'm hearing proposed is it would say representing the department's executive leadership team, and the words other than the secretary would be removed. So just want to summarize that. I see Danielle has her hand raised.
Yeah, I was just going to kind of echo what everyone said. And while I do appreciate Representative Dent and where he was coming from and the other concerns, these are published online. So regardless of if the secretary is in the room or not, the accessibility to see it is still there. So I think having the language other than the secretary is a moot point, because one way or another, it would be accessible to whoever the secretary is.
Thanks so much for sharing that, Danielle. Because I was in the room for that meeting, I'll just share this because I don't believe Representative Dent is here. I think there was some concern about subcommittee meetings, which currently there isn't a record posted online, and there's quite a bit of dialogue there. So I think that was mentioned. Okay, Dr. Bendahan.
One of the things that I'd like to point out is that this is not anything personal. I don't think we need to, there's no animosity directed at the secretary in any way. In fact, we talked about the relationship being much stronger than it's ever been. But I think it was Representative Dent who mentioned that statutory change has a long lifespan, and we don't know who the next secretary is going to be. And the idea that there is an open door to participation at the board in that way, I think is one of the things that made him nervous. But the language itself, I think we need to clarify, are we saying that the secretary should not be a part of the board, or are we saying that the language that is currently being proposed is seems harsh and derogatory? I don't know. Those are two different issues.
That's an excellent point. Thank you, Ben. Thoughts about Ben's question from anyone?
I guess
Senator
my
Wilson.
sorry, Senator.
No, go ahead, Mary.
I guess my question is, like, what are we trying to achieve by having DCYF on the board, and why is that not achievable through the secretary's presence, and why is it better achievable through just a member of the executive leadership team? I guess that's kind of my question.
Well, I can say
Mary.
that I kind of started it all because one of the things that I noticed was in the statute, the secretary or no one from DCYF was on the board except for someone who is representative of the child. For example, Danielle, if I can call you out, my friend, working under and in DCYF. But I know we've had conversations as a board about that does not mean as an individual that one is a representative of DCYF, nor does it often feel comfortable to speak because people think oftentimes you are representing DCYF. And in no other board that I've sat on, whether it's a state leadership board, whether it's so beyond work task forces and beyond workforce and committees and all those other things, traditionally, it's always been the secretary or their designee. And so one of the things also I think I had heard conversation in the past meetings with DCYF that there was a want to have the secretary in the room, but the secretary often was not there and didn't come, nor was there necessarily representation there that could do anything with the conversations or the changes folks were talking about. And that is just, so for me, it was a non-voting representative because that's not what the goal is, but it is in my mind to have someone who actually could do something with the conversations and with the public comment we're hearing and with our work as a board. So that's where it started. And then the subcommittee met that started looking at the draft, and then the iterations came from those smaller subcommittee conversations. So that's the history that I have with that.
Wonderful. Thank you, Senator Wilson. Dr. Diane Levy. It's hard to hear you.
Better now?
Yes, that's much better. Much better.
So I had a personal concern when we were discussing this, because I initially was feeling if the secretary was a designee of our board, would that change the dynamic from the standpoint of things would be centered around her. However, I've come to I sort of feel differently. I think it's our responsibility as a board to do active facilitation to make sure that that does not occur, and that we continue to be independent. But I don't think that that hinges on her not being a part of the board or her designee. I'm fine personally with that that statement of either leaving it at executive leadership team or the secretary and or her designee.
Thank you, Dr. Levy. I see Lois Martin's hand is raised.
Hi, thank you, Lisha. So I have a question, and looking at, is there an example around the country of what other boards that are similar to ours, what they've done? And if their secretary or whatever title they use is part of their accountability/oversight board?
That is a good question. I do not know the answer.
So I'm wondering if that may be something to look at to see before we make this decision. Or I know we're coming up on the time for a session. I don't know if that's something that we can come back together on, but that's just a thought that came to me, is just to see what other what other boards like ours are doing around the country.
I think that's a great question. So if folks want to respond to that, please do, and I'm just going to keep answering hands that are raised. I see that Anna Armstrong's hand is raised.
Yeah, I did have some input just along that same line. I serve on our local school board, and I'm sitting here listening to all the discussion about the including of the secretary, and I cannot imagine sitting in a board meeting without the top leadership of our school district in the room. Just because the goals are the same, and the job that our superintendent has to carry out our wishes, that we make decisions for him to carry out. And if he's not in the room, and if he's not there able to provide information, guidance, resources, that kind of puts us at a loss. And he also is a non-voting member. We pass resolutions, we approve budgets, we hire and fire people, and we also make sure that we are following, state laws, state guidance, everything. And so I don't know if that answers Lois's question about how other boards are running, but it makes sense to me, other than I guess I don't understand. Now, if I were to have a problem, say we needed to do something, we needed to discuss something specific about the superintendent, we have guidance outside of our school district to get that information. There is a state level board that I could go to say, hey, I have this issue, and I could deal with it. But not having our top leadership in the room when we conduct business, to me, it just seems difficult and maybe not helpful. That when we got to get work done, and not having someone in the room that is going to get that work done for us,
Great.
doesn't make sense to me. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Anna. And I see Rep Dent is joining. And Ruth, is it okay if I go to him just because he has limited time? Okay, great. Rep Dent.
Thank you, Elisha. I appreciate that. I'm a little overbooked today. Anyway, I have real concerns about that. We're an oversight accountability board. We'll probably change our name, and that's good. But it's we would have the power to invite the secretary in anytime we would like to, but we may have a meeting to where we may not want the secretary there, and having them as a member, we wouldn't be able to exclude them. I think it's very, very important that we remember why we created the oversight board. We created DCYF because there was some challenges with children's administration in DSHS, and we weren't able to really keep up with what was happening and follow and track the outcomes. And so we started a new agency for that reason. We started an oversight board because we wanted to track where they were going and what it looked like if they were on the right proper direction. And I think we need to keep our autonomy with this board. And it was something that the votes were not there had we not had this oversight board to create the new agency, and it's something we worked really hard at. And remember that there's a lot of advisory boards out there, and if we turn this into something like that, then it becomes an advisory board, and then we have no power. We have no ability to change or track much, and I think that concerns me a lot. It was about we're going to keep them on track because it's child welfare we're dealing with, and I'm very, very concerned to see us allow that to happen. And we already have a representative from DCYF on the board, and we can, if we need to change the title and who they might be, that's fine. But the secretary will change. The secretary is a political position, and we want to keep that in mind as well. Keep the politics out of this as much as we can, so we can accomplish the original goals that we stated in the original legislation. So I appreciate the time. I'll hang on for a few minutes, but I can't stay very long. So thank you very much for calling on me, Elisha.
Yes, thank you so much, Rep. Dent. Ruth.
Well, Tom, I know we have discussed this at length, and I don't think you were on when Dr. Levy spoke to this issue, and she has reflected on it and thinks it's our responsibility as a board to facilitate conversations and, to come to our own conclusions. But that we are trying to form a new relationship with the department. And we currently do not have a representative of the department or their designee on the board. We have a member who represents the union and the workers, but we do not have a representative of the department. So in light of the fact that we are working to establish a collaborative relationship, I think reflecting on this, that it does make sense to have a representing the department's executive leadership team in the legislation and leave out other than the secretary, understanding that the secretary primarily will not be there unless we ask her to be there. I also, speaking to Lois's point, I am not aware of another oversight board for a department in another state. I think this really was a unique creature that we created in this legislation. So I'm not sure trying to look at other states would be helpful. And we need to have a bill at the beginning of session, or we're not going to get legislation. It's a short session. It's going to be very intense. And if we don't have a bill ready to go, we're not going to get legislation.
Can I just jump in and say both Oregon and California do have state agency leaders on their oversight boards, and Zach's going to put a link in the chat on the examples he found quickly for us. So it is not unusual at all. He just put in both links. So anyway, just an FYI.
Great. Thank you so much, Ruth and Senator Wilson. Lois, I see your hand is raised.
Yeah, thank you very much. I was actually going to point out that Senator Wilson did mention that there are 2 states that do actually have board similar to ours. And that's why I asked for the link. So I appreciate that, Senator Wilson and Zach. But I also want to point out, I think there's a difference between our role as an accountability/oversight board and using, honor your example of a school board, because they are involved in more personnel decisions and that type of thing. Where I look at our role, which is why we have this legislation, I look at our role more of what we see happening when different agency heads are called in and they are questions about, what their plan is for the department and that type of thing, as opposed to being more involved in the day-to-day decisions. And I'm also thinking as a community member about how comfortable people will feel, or even the DCYF staff person who's there to be able to really vent and share if the secretary is in the room. So I just want to express caution about that. I feel that, we don't want to do anything that'll stifle that type of participation.
Thank you so much, Lois. Additional thoughts on this? I'm not seeing hands. So I just want to thank everyone for being so open and sharing their thoughts and concerns. Ruth, were you going to say something?
No, sorry.
No problem. No problem. What I am suggesting, Senator Christian.
Oh, good morning. I didn't respond to the changes, but I can assure you I've read these over and been given a lot of thought to it. And the reason I joined this oversight board is I thought maybe it'd be a good opportunity to speak in and maybe impact some changes. I will say with what I've seen here, putting the secretary on there, it seems like it's turning into more of a social club than actually something was designed to help point out the problems and provide some oversight. To me, we've got a record number of infant and child mortality deaths and near deaths. We have a record in lawsuits. We have serious overcrowding issues. And it seems like this board is spending more time, in my personal opinion, focusing on things that do not affect change. And the reason this board was, or at least when I joined the board, was I thought that maybe this would have some impact and be able to point out the changes. So I'm just myself. I'm not for weakening the board even more. I'm not for having the secretary on the board. Because again, to me, it just turns the board into nothing more than a social club for DCYF, is we're really not. It's more than an illusion to the public that we have some kind of oversight or power. And from what I read of the legislation, our total sum of impact is a report, which is nothing more than regurgitating other information out there instead of having a real impact report saying what we really as a board, as a cumulative group of experts, have seen in our year, and in making suggestions on policy. And I just don't see that. And then with these changes, to me, makes it even more weak. So I'll be a no on this, probably on all the changes. And thank you for allowing me to speak.
Thank you, Senator Christian.
Can I just step in, Senator Christian, as your colleague? Just to say, I just have to say to the board, a social club would not be how I define this, and I don't want anyone on this Zoom call to think that's the work of this board. And the fact is, policy changes cannot occur until the legislature is in session. And part of the work of the report was from legislation that occurred that we're trying to change so that we actually can be impactful and make a difference. Because up to this point, we didn't have any opportunity to do that because the statute only allowed us to report out on metrics and objectives. So I just want to make sure that board members and folks listening, and you also are clear, this is about moving forward and moving ahead and doing what's right for children and families across our state. And the policy changes will come only when we're in session and bills come before us that we can actually do. So I just want to, just respectfully disagree and just say that this is a body of work that has to be done in order for us to have more tools at hand, I think, to make the changes that I know that you're looking for and that I am looking for as well. So I just, publicly also needed to say that. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Senator Wilson. Rep Dent, I see your hand.
Thank you again, Elijah. So, Senator Wilson, I respect.
We're having a hard time hearing you.
You're not hearing me?
Yes, I can hear you now.
Okay. The changes we're making and how the information we're going to do and looking at the outcomes and the report. This is great stuff. Allowing the secretary on the board, which is
Your sound is cutting out, Representative Dent.
here. Is this better over here?
Yes, it sure is.
Okay. But allowing a secretary on the board is not there was someone who we're going to provide oversight to is not going to work. It just isn't going to work because you're not going to provide oversight to somebody that's a member of the board. Just isn't. It's going to cause major issues. So I'm real concerned about that. The rest of the changes I was all in about. I thought it was good, and I really thought we had come to this conclusion the other day that allowing that having the secretary on there was not where we needed to go. And now I see everything changing, and I guess watching years of work on this DCYF thing, we're going to lose oversight. We will lose the oversight that we've had. And we've always had the power to bring the secretary in if we want them in there to ask questions. So I think we should rethink this part, and we can always revisit it next year. It has happened very fast this year, and we have a lot of new members on the board that maybe don't totally understand what we're about, where we've been, and where we're going. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Dent. Pamela Javier, I see your hand.
Alrighty, hi everyone. I am leaning more towards what Representative Dent is thinking on not having the secretary on board. I mean, like we have the opportunity to bring in the secretary when needed, but my and it's something that Lewis had mentioned too, is like there might be weird power dynamics, like someone might not be able to speak up about something. I know, like from my personal experiences, if there's a higher upper authority and person in the room, I tend to be a little bit more quiet. And I think the group really strives better when we can just be ourselves and give our professional opinions and insights without feeling like we have to walk on eggshells. So I would be opposed to if we were to add the DCYF secretary as a non-voting member. I think that there could be times where the secretary will be needed and we can talk about it and bring in the secretary, but I don't think they should be in every meeting.
Thank you, Pamela. Zach, I see your hand is raised.
Hi, good afternoon. I just want to provide a reminder and clarify what the proposed language says. The proposed language does not include the secretary as a member. What's offered right now is just a designee from the executive leadership team. And so a lot of the conversation has started to center around the secretary, and so I just wanted to provide that clarification.
Thank you so much, Zach. Pamela, thanks for coming back.
Yeah, so sorry, I don't know if you go by Zachary or Zach, but so when you mean a designee, is it just somebody that the secretary chooses, or who is that position? Like, what is that, or who is that person? Sorry.
Yeah, of course. That it would be someone that the secretary chooses. And from a technical kind of drafting perspective, that is the normal language that you would put in. And then, boards typically work these things out together with the department if they feel the representative that was sent wasn't, appropriate or the right person. Usually it gets figured out. Yeah.
Great. Thank you, Zach. Rep Dent, I see your hand next.
Sure. Thank you again, Lisha. So, having someone from basically the executive team is the team that the secretary is going to bring in and hire when they're appointed to that position. And those, again, follow the secretary. And that's, again, not exactly where we're trying to go. We're still going to be providing oversight to not only the secretary, but the team, the executive team. And it's that is thin ice we're walking on here. We're going to lose our ability to challenge what is happening. They're going to walk into a meeting. They're going to be defensive of what they're working on, what's going on. And that is when we're trying to provide oversight or find answers, we don't need to have someone who's defensive. And that was part of what concerns me. The secretary and the executive team that they bring with them will not be a good fit on the oversight board. Thank you.
Thank you, Rep. Dent. Lois, I see your hand.
Thank you, Lisha. I think we have to consider that including the secretary or even their representative, it risks blurring the line between oversight and administration, which to me that goes back to the school board. And it could undermine the board's our perceived independence as well as public trust about and then even though it's a non-voting status, it doesn't, to me, that doesn't mitigate this concern because their participation still allows influence in discussions and the dynamics in the room. And so I have to say, when it's time to vote, I would not support having the representative or the secretary, even as a non-voting member, on the oversight/accountability board.
Thank you, Lois. Ben, I see your hand next.
I'm curious about the language. Why do we specify executive team? Because those, I'm assuming, are the direct reports to the secretary. And that's a group that changes a lot. There are some people who are on the executive team and then they may not be on the executive team. Why don't we just leave it open that there is someone representing DCYF? Why do we specify the executive team?
That's a good question. Thank you so much, Ben. I think Diane, you were next. Oh, I think you might be on mute.
Is it no?
It's very, very, very soft.
I'm going to try and figure out my microphone and then I'll come.
Okay, sounds great. Rep. Dent, I see your hand next. Rep. Dent? It looks like you're muted. So I'm going to go to the next hand that I see up, and that's Pamela.
I'd have to agree with Lewis with her statement, piggyback the idea that even if after hearing Zach and I still wouldn't be able to vote for it just because, again, that person is appointed from the secretary or is, representing. And I just think that not, I don't know the person or anything or who would be in that position, but they might have their objectives and it might just make it very difficult for us to move our oversight board committee meetings. And so thank you, Zach, for clarifying that because I was a bit confused. But however, I still would not vote for it even if it was a person appointed. So
Thank you, Pamela. Senator Wilson.
Yeah, I just wanted to just share to make sure people know that, the secretary serves at the pleasure of the governor, the executive branch. And anyone that would come before the board as a representative, regardless of what level they were at, if they were representing the agency, would come with the secretaries and the executive branch's perspectives. That would not change. So if we're talking about, it doesn't matter because if they are there representing the agency, they are not representing themselves. They're representing at the pleasure of whatever the executive branch would like them to be there representing, regardless of what their individual like or dislike is, if that makes sense. So it doesn't matter, secretary or other. they would still be the voice of whatever and whomever is leading the state and who is choosing the leadership at those agencies, if that makes any sense at all. So having them in a room or out of a room, and as I think Danielle said earlier, TVW, it's always on, so you can always come back and watch what the conversation is. I think we have to, again, go back to intent and think about and go back to our why. But I would also say we've spent a lot of time on this over this interim and as a board, and would be remiss if we did not find a way to move forward and put this ahead this session. I just think we need to figure this out.
Thank you, Senator Wilson. Dr. Levy.
Okay, is this any better?
Yes.
Yes.
Oh, yay. Okay. So a couple of things that, one is I think that the intent was truly to improve communication between our board and the agency. That was the idea. Whether the secretary is the correct person to be there or not, I think that's what we're arguing, but I think that really was the intent. I think in my mind, having a designee present should not influence how we do our oversight. If we are doing appropriate facilitation and monitoring during our meetings. However, I'm really bothered that we have so much disagreement on this. And in my mind, I think we should probably move to either strike this first portion or reconsider it at a different time, but move ahead with the rest of the bill.
Thank you, Dr. Levy. Representative Dent.
Thank you. Sorry I didn't answer a bit ago. I was being challenged here with that technology, but I agree with Dr. Levy. Thank you for that. I think we should strike this part for the moment, move on with the rest of what we've agreed on, and we can continue the conversation with this with the possible membership on the board at a later time. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Dent. Justice Bridge.
I agree with Dr. Levy as well.
Thank you so much for saying that. Okay, so with that, I am going to move to the second change, and I'm going to read it out loud. So renaming the DCYF Oversight Board. This was discussed at the November 20 meeting. The suggested name is DCYF Accountability Board. So the revision that was made is that policy was removed from the title. Any comments on this? Ben.
Lisha, I hate to do this to you, but I'm unclear what we just decided. When we said strike item number 1, does that mean that we're going to have another meeting at some other time, or are we going to talk about it some more today?
That is a great question. So my intent, which may be different than what was suggested, was just to move on to discuss the other changes and then hopefully be able to go back to that. But I think you're raising an excellent point, and I'm open to feedback.
Well, because we intend to vote on this as a package, and so that would have to be resolved today if we're going to vote on all the draft bill changes, right?
Yes, this needs to be decided today. That is correct.
And unless we, as a board, approve all the other changes, but want to have further discussion at later meetings on item 1. I don't know what it is that we decided to do.
Yeah, thank you for asking for that clarification. I'm going to see some hands. Representative Dent.
Thank you, Elisha. I would make a motion that we proceed with the rest of the changes. And item number 1, I'm sorry, I don't have an agenda in front of me, but item number 1, that we take up another time, that we do not vote on it today, that we further discuss it, and we can take it up at another time.
Thank you, Representative Dent. So Robert's, I'm new to Robert's rules. So the question, I think, is there a second?
I will second it, Christian.
Okay. Okay. So I think normally there's discussion at this point.
Well, again, quick question. Is that what Dr. Levy was suggesting, or are we now talking about 2 competing ideas? one, leave it to the rest after the discussion of the other items, and the other is to not talk about it anymore today?
That's it.
It's a very good question, and this is definitely not my usual purview, but I think in my mind, that piece of the proposed legislation is problematic for our board and is worthy of more discussion. The issue is going to be that, from what I hear from the legislators, there's not a lot of time to do that additional discussion. And so I think it's imperative that we get through the rest of the statute and at least put that forward. And so I guess in my mind, I'm basically saying, are we going to remove that number one? Or at least as Representative Dent, vote on the rest of it, and then we can consider whether we want to discuss the first one more at a later date.
Thank you, Dr. Levy. Bobby Bridge, you're on mute.
I do agree again with Dr. Levy, and I think that's what Rep. Dent meant, which was that, and I think that legislators have made it clear that today is the day that we need to vote on this, what we're going to present as a bill in this session. And furthermore, that this is a very quick session. There's not going to be a whole lot of time for changes, et cetera. And so this would be an issue that would not appear in this present bill. And we could address it, after the session or maybe even during the session. I'm not sure whether that's even possible. But for now, I think the idea is we drop this and we go forward to see what parts of this bill we're going to propose to the legislature. That's what I think Dr. Levy's saying, and that's what I would support as well.
Thank you, Justice Bridge. Representative Dent.
Yes, I just wanted to confirm with that's what I meant, what Dr. Levy's said, and also with Justice Bridge.
Okay. Thank you all. So what I'm hearing is that we are going to move forward right now and discuss the other proposed changes, many of which were discussed on November 20, and we are not going to include number one in a vote at this time. That's what I'm hearing from the group. Lois, I see your hand is raised.
It is, because if you just mentioned if we're using Robert's Rules of Order, then we have the discussion and we need to take a vote because we have a motion and a second. So we need to deal with number one now, and then we can move on to 2 and 3. But right now we have a motion and a second. We need to take a vote.
Okay. Thank you so much, Lois. So we will be voting. I do see 2 hands. I'm going to let people talk and then we will vote. Rep. Berquist.
Thanks. I hope you all can hear me. I just want to make sure I'm understanding the motion. It's to take this suggestion off of the draft legislation. So is this currently in the draft or not? That's what I don't quite understand. If it's in the draft, the motion would be to vote to remove that piece from the current draft language. Is that what I'm understanding?
So the subcommittee met last week. That's a great question. And this was something that rose to the top based on that discussion. So this is what's being proposed in the bill. The bill that the board saw on November 20 has changed. That's my understanding. And if anyone wants to jump in, Senator Wilson, I see you.
The language does not include this. In the current draft does not include this change right here, from what I understand. And Zach, if you can jump on and double, that's what you were trying to say earlier. The current draft as it's written does not include the language other than the secretary. Is that correct, Zach, or not?
Yeah, I just put it in the chat what it says. It's one non-voting representative from the department representing the department's executive leadership team.
So the current draft stops at after leadership team and does not include the language other than the secretary. That's the current language. And so that's so what you would be removing is not the language as it appears in number one, but the language as it appears in number one without the words other than the secretary. that was added in the subcommittee meeting and was not changed in the current draft that is in play, at least legislatively in play. Does that make sense?
I can clarify if that's helpful. So when the subcommittee met, Zach was present, and this may be my oversight with respect to understanding process. Changes were made to the statute based on that meeting via like track changes, and that was sent yesterday to co-chairs. However, I probably am not following process.
Well, and I don't want to say that. So Zach, I thought you were just saying you were reading from the latest copy earlier. So we just need to make sure, as Lois is saying, that we're actually going to vote on what it is that we're taking out, just to be very, very clear if that's what we're going to do.
Right. Nicholas, maybe you could share your screen, what was sent yesterday. It's also the current version in the bill in the folder, but I'm going to go to hands because I know we have limited time. Lois.
Oh, I'm sorry, Lisha. I meant to lower. Forgive me.
Oh, okay. That's okay. Representative Dent.
Thank you, Lisha. I'll yield to some of the other folks first.
Okay. So what Nicholas is doing is showing the most current version of the bill, and I believe it's on page 1. Page 2, please. Okay, so this is what we currently have. So I'm reading from line 22 on page 2. One non-voting representative from the governor's office, one non-voting representative from the department representing the department. Okay, Senator Wilson, you are right on. It says representing the department's executive leadership team. That is exactly what it says. Thank you. And thanks, Nicholas. Representative Dent, did you mean to raise your hand?
I did. So, and that's the issue that I have is representing the department's executive leadership team, because that just is in the office of the secretary. It would be the same thing. And that's my issue is it's okay. We need somebody on there. We had talked about possibly the legislative liaison being part of it. The department executive leadership team is the secretary's office. That is the team that the people that they bring in. And that is my major issue with this. And I think it's something we haven't, I think this is going to warrant a lot more discussion. This is not what I, from the meeting the other day that was going to bill. I don't.
You're breaking up a little.
And
I heard you say that you don't agree with it.
It just kind of jumped out. I just be in there after.
We can't hear you, Rep Dent.
Okay, can you hear me now?
It's cutting
Hello?
off and on. Yes, we can hear you.
You can hear me now. Okay, so this line representing the department's executive leadership team was not what I understood would be in the bill after our meeting a few days ago.
That is correct. Based on the subcommittee meeting that was last week, this current version does not reflect what was discussed at the subcommittee meeting. I apologize. For some reason, that's not here. That is correct. Ben.
I think Representative Dent clarified this, but I'm not sure. The controversy here is whether or not we include the secretary on the board. The controversy isn't about the language. So if we're putting off a vote, we're putting off a vote because we don't have a consensus about the secretary joining the board. I don't think the controversy is about the change in the language. So I'm trying to figure out we're postponing a discussion about the secretary joining the board, not just dropping off the 2 or 3 words at the end of the language, right?
Okay, thank you, Ben. I'm just going to go in order. So I see Representative Berquist next.
Thanks. This is where I thought I was understanding what Representative Dent was thinking. I feel like he is really motioning to remove the non-voting member from the department from this legislation. I think that was what his motion was intended to be, so that there would not be a representative voting or non-voting from DCYF on the board. There would be from the governor's office. I want to make sure I understood the motion, though. That I feel like that's the motion he was making, but the language was very unclear.
Yeah, I would agree. I would agree.
But we also do have a DCYF member on the board that represents child welfare. So it's not removing DCYF, it's removing a particular leadership. And that's what we were going toward. So, if people are not in agreement, that's a whole nother ball of wax, I guess. And what I would also say is throughout this entire process, this bill could change. I'm just going to be really honest with you. This is only the first stop, is the board. And as much as the board is the board, and this is the legislation, it's got to make it through both chambers and committees and then off the floor. And so as much as we can solidify and come to neutral, that's great. And we will have, and there will be further conversation. You can bet your bottom dollar as this makes its way through both chambers. So I just want to make sure people understand that as well, that nothing is solid in gold or in brick at all once it leaves the board. Even with our stamp of approval on it, things could change. So I just need to make sure, and this goes through state government, not through committee that either Rep. Berquist or I chair, even though the work is happening from that agency. But anyway, just an FYI.
Thank you, Senator Wilson. Mary, thank you for waiting.
No, that's fine. Yeah, I think my understanding was, I just want to clarify, my understanding was different from Dr. Ben Dahan. Like, there is controversy around both the language and the idea of having DCYF there at all. So I think the motion was to remove this whole section, everything that's in red text was to be removed. Everything I, that whole section to be removed.
Okay.
I think that's the motion on the floor, just so everyone's.
Okay, so both. That's what I'm hearing. Removal of both. Thank you very much, Mary. Senator Christian.
I'd like to thank you, Mary. I would also agree that that's what I had believed Tom's motion to be, was that we were tabling that number one item and all connected items to it, which would be everything in red, item line number 23 through 25. That's what I understood that motion of Tom's to be, that we weren't going to include a member of the executive team or the secretary, not that it was going to go through forward with as it's currently being shown to us now. So thank you.
Thank you, Senator Christian. Justice Bridge.
Yeah, I think that is the understanding. Is Rep. Dent not still with us? But I think Rep. Christian was the one who seconded it, so I think we can take at least the seconder's motion. But I think that's what he wants. That is to be taken out. It may be talked again about this. It may be talked again about in the legislative process, no doubt about it. But for the purposes of moving a bill from this board today, that part would be gone, and we should move on so that we can get something out today before the legislature. And that would be what I'd support, and I think that's where
we really,
Dr. Levy's from too.
Yeah, I think we need to really move on. I think we could potentially say at the end with our final vote, hopefully on this, is that we agree to vote on everything with the understanding that we've made a change by striking number one. Can we do that just in one vote at the end?
We didn't strike anything.
Well, we struck the red section and I, right?
Well, yeah, but it really didn't exist because we haven't voted on this thing. So, it's a proposal.
With that change, we'll be voting at the end. Can we just do it in one vote rather than take two votes?
That sounds feasible to me.
There is a motion. This is Rep. There's a motion on the floor. And if you want to change this, so we need to, I don't think we could just continue on a vote on the end. It would be in defiance of the motion. So if you want to, if I could see the motion change or something I'm not sure that I can stay much longer, and I want to be here. So I'm trying to make this. I'm working hard to accommodate everything here.
How about we
But
do a voice, how about we do a voice vote, Rep Dent, and on the removal of I, and then we can move on and then do the vote on the end of the other two pieces so that you're here for the vote, that you can be sure that it's not going to show up in the draft that goes to the code revisor's office, if that works for you. And maybe, Elisha, we could do a voice vote, and then if it sounds like there may be some disagreement, we would do a roll call vote. Does that work? Co-Chair Levy, does that sound like a plan?
Sounds good.
Awesome.
Yep.
that worked.
Okay. I see one more hand, Lois.
No, I just want to make it clear that because there is a motion and a second, we do have to do a vote, whether you do a voice, however you choose to do it. But with the motion and the second, it is now a separate issue.
Okay, so I've heard a motion and a second to remove both the language and the inclusion of the secretary from further discussion, including the final bill. So now I believe it's a vote. Is that, yes, Senator Wilson?
Draft, the final draft.
The final draft. Thank you. Absolutely. Thank you. Okay, so all in favor of removal, say aye, please.
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, all, and then those nays, please respond. Okay, any abstentions? Okay, with that, this has been removed. So we can now move on with the rest of the draft bill. Thank you all. I appreciate this level of engagement and discussion. So I'm going to keep us moving forward. The second item is renaming the DCYF Oversight Board. As I mentioned earlier, the proposed name is DCYF Accountability Board. This was pretty much what was discussed on November 20. Are there any comments about this? Okay, so I'm going on to number 3. This is a very minor change. The word realities was removed from the draft bill. So it currently reads, both the agency and the oversight structure have evolved, and the existing statutory framework no longer reflects the present scope, functions, or operation of either entity. Any discussion on this? Okay, thank you. We're moving to number 4, Nicholas, please. Next slide. Okay, there's a new intent section. This is very simple. So there was a duplicate text that was identical in the draft bill that has now been removed. So there's not a duplication. I'm assuming no comments on this. Terrific. Nicholas, next slide, please. Okay, board member role changes. These are suggested changes by our members. So number 1, amend the physician with experience working with youth role to physician or clinician with advanced medical training. The rationale, this was proposed by Dr. Diane Levy, is that it would be more inclusive of advanced practice clinicians, including physician assistants and advanced registered nurse practitioners. Dr. Levy.
And I would actually change it so that it would just be physician or advanced practice clinician with experience working with youth.
Okay. Physician.
I think it can be more succinct than that. Physician or advanced practice clinician is the acceptable term.
Thank you. Working with youth.
Working with youth.
Physician, thank you so much. So what I'm hearing is physician or advanced practice clinician working with youth. Any comments about that? Okay, thank you, Dr. Levy. I'm going to move us to number 2. If you could just go back to the last.
Sorry, is that a motion to change that?
Dr. Levy?
Sorry. Was that a motion to change that on the slide and the proposed to what was just expressed?
I don't know what Dr. Levy intended. I'm going to ask her. Dr. Levy.
I am not. So do we need a motion to just change the way that appears? Because it hasn't been written in the statute yet, right? Or the bill yet, correct?
It is not.
So this would be, in addition, a change.
Senator Christian.
My understanding is that we're talking here of change and what we're proposing right in front of us. That's why we had a motion to get rid of number one. If we vote on these changes to the proposed legislation, it would need to be changed here to make it part of that. Otherwise, what is currently written in front of me will go forward as far as what's being, introduced, not that the changes Dr. Levy just mentioned. So if you want those, I think we need to have a motion to change it to that new language.
Senator Christian, these are ideas that have come forth since the changes came before. These are things that have come in the last few days. So yes, they're not in the version you see, and these are kind of putting out what we've heard recently from members and then would need to discuss. And again, we would vote on adding these to the draft. So this is not, we've added them. This is ideas from board members that have come in the last week or so to consider today before we vote on the final draft version, I think that we want to send to the code revisers. So there may be a vote, but there's no motion on the floor yet to do anything other than to learn more about individual board members' interests in making these changes potentially.
Then by what you have just said, you're asking us to make these changes to the proposed legislation that we're discussing right now.
No, I'm not. I'm
have to be-
asking,
okay.
no, board members
So-
are chatting about the ideas they're putting forward to wonder
Okay.
whether, I would like to know, Dr. Levy, are you thinking that it would be good for us to make a change in this legislation? And again, anyway,
Yeah.
So
Oh,
will we be voting today to move forward with the legislation or recommended legislation at the end of this meeting?
That
Yes
is
or
my
no?
understanding. Yes.
Then we need to make sure in what we're discussing, changing this language to vote on this to add to the new legislation, we need to make it clear what the doctor would like to do. Otherwise, it's going forward exactly as it's written in front of me today.
that's
Dr.
exactly
Levy?
what we're
I would be happy to make a motion. I would motion that we amend physician with experience working with youth to physician or advanced practice clinician working with youth.
Thank
For
you,
that,
Dr.
I would
Levy. There's a second? Senator Christian, you seconded?
That's correct.
Wonderful. Okay, we're going to do just a joint with a joint vote instead of roll call vote. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Those who disagree, please say nay. Thank you. Any abstentions? Okay, with that, the change is made. It should be physician or advanced practice clinician working with youth. Lois, I see your hand.
Yes. Is it possible, since we are making these changes in real time, for Nicholas or you to add the language so it's on the screen?
Or Diane, maybe you can add it in the chat.
I can do that.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Diane.
Okay, so I am moving us to number 2. Amend the foster parent representative role to include or kinship care provider. The rationales, so it would say foster care or kinship care provider representative. The rationale for this, which was suggested by Shelley Willis, is it would be more inclusive of kinship caregivers who are also licensed care providers. Any discussion around this? Lois, I see your hand is raised.
Nope, lowering it.
Okay, thank you so much. Any other discussion? Okay, Nicholas, could you please move? Justice Bridge.
I'm gonna so move, right? Don't you want a motion now to include this?
That let's do it.
That language. I mean, we just voted on the first one. I'm gonna say so moved on the second one.
Thank you very much. Okay.
Second.
I see Ruth seconding. Okay, so to change the language to, oh wait, Anna, I see your hand.
Yeah, I was thinking, because we're not making any changes, I don't believe we need a second motion and a second. I think we only do that when there's changes to anything, because this is what is presented to us as what we want to do. And if it's already there, at the end will agree to everything. So that's just my thought.
It's a
Thank you so much.
change to the draft that was presented.
Yeah.
So therefore, I think in our practice today, with Robert's rules being cited umpteen times here this afternoon, I'm
Yeah.
going to move that this be included in the draft that we are going to turn around in a couple of minutes, hopefully, and vote on.
Thank you, Justice Bridge. Okay, Senator Christian.
Thank you. In respectfully, I think what it is the reason I brought up my point is because we were making a change to that number one on here, and then that would be required as far as the overall vote at the end. I understand is we're going to make a vote on changing these changes to the legislation we're recommending, and not because it's different because of these changes. So since we're not actually changing anything on number two, unlike number one, because there will be a vote at the end to include these changes to the final legislation, I do think that that's out of order. Just because we haven't made any changes to this number two, it will be accepted as it is written in front of me.
Thank you, Senator Christian. Okay, so with that, I'm not hearing a second. So, okay, so Nicholas, could you please take us to the next slide? Thank you. So just want to let people know what they're voting on. This is exactly what we discussed in November 20. We have flexibility in outcome reporting. The annual report will become a biannual report due on July 1 of every odd numbered year. Licensing reviews have been removed from the draft bill. And finally, we are clarifying that the board resides within OFM. And I believe that was the last slide. I think we may be doing it, people. Thank you for hanging in there with me and your patience as I navigate this. Okay, and I think we're all done with slides. Thank you so much, Nicholas. So I'm going to move us forward. Is there any additional discussion? Okay, I am going to proceed with a roll call vote. We have already decided that number one, inclusion of the secretary would be struck, and so I'm going to keep us moving forward. So here's the roll call vote. When I say your name, please unmute and say aye, nay, or abstain. And we are voting on all the changes right now. Rep. Berquist.
Has there been a motion to do this vote? I just want to
There
make
has
sure.
not. Thank you. 100%. Is there a motion to do this vote? Thank you.
I move.
This is Judge Amamila.
Thank you,
To do the
Judge
vote.
Amamila. Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
And I see Shelley Willis has seconded. Okay, I'm going to proceed with a roll call vote. Appreciate everyone's help here. So please unmute yourself and say either aye, nay, or abstain. Thank you. Okay, Judge Sharonda Amamilo.
Aye.
Thank you. Anna Armstrong.
Aye.
Thank you. Rep. Berquist.
Aye.
Thank you. Katie Byron.
Aye.
Thank you. Justice Bobby Bridge.
Aye.
Senator Leonard Christian.
Apologize. Can you restate what we're voting on? My computer had to come back on and I lost my connection.
Not a problem. So we are voting on everything you have seen today with the exception of number one, and we're voting on them as a whole, as a package.
So the question is being right now to make the change debating to the final legislation, or are we voting on the final legislation being recommended? Which of the
This, I believe, is the final legislation that's being recommended before it goes on to the legislature. That is my understanding.
Okay, then I'll be a no at this point. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Senator Christian. I appreciate that. I'm Representative Tom Dent. Don't believe he's here. Okay, Dr. Ben DeHaan.
Aye.
Thank you. Pamela Javier.
Aye.
Thank you. Daniel Johnson.
Aye.
Wonderful. Ruth Kagi.
Aye.
Dr. Diane Levy.
Aye.
Thank you. Lois Martin.
Aye.
Thank you. Tanya McClanahan. Oh, she's dealing with some weather situation. Stacy Williams.
Aye.
Thank you. Shelley Willis.
Aye.
Thank you. And then Senator Claire Wilson.
Aye.
Thank you. Great. With that, we had, I believe, Nicholas, you might need to correct me on this, 15 ayes, 1 nay, and 2 people not present. Given this, the bill changes have been approved and it will now advance to the legislature. Thank you so much all for your patience and your efforts and your passion. Okay, so I'm going to give us a time check. We are at 1:20. We did have a break scheduled. However, we now have Annie Chung was going to present at this time. I want to turn this to the co-chairs. Co-chairs, what are you thinking about? 5-minute break or just continuing?
Can we do a 5-minute and have everybody be back in time? And will that allow us to still do Annie? And I want to make sure we give everybody all their time, but I know it's been a long sit. So Co-Chair Levy, what do you think?
With that, it's I've got 1:21. Do you want to try for 4 minutes, everybody?
Okay.
Be back at 1:25?
Let's do that.
Wonderful. Okay, we'll be back
thanks.
at 1:25. Thanks so much, everyone.
So hopefully people are back and really appreciate the conversation. And I know it went a little longer than we thought, but I think it's important and appreciative when people kind of put their heart and minds out there, because that's what this is all about. And it's the right thing to do for the right reason. So I hope that's how all our meetings are, that we're able to kind of share from where we come and what our thinking is. That's the goal. So and want to welcome everyone back. And Annie, you're important and you're still important. So want to kind of introduce you and give you the floor. But next up, we have a presentation from Annie Chung. And Annie is the Director of Legal Services from the Legal Council for Youth and Children, better known as LCYC. If you are walking in the halls, it took me a while to figure out what that was myself. And she's going to talk a little bit about the history of 1227, as I said, which is keeping families together, and Senate Bill 6109, which is the fentanyl response bill that was sponsored a couple years ago, trying to deal with lethality of what we know as the high synthetic opioid crisis. And so she's going to present, and then we'll have time to ask questions. Without that, any further ado, I'm going to pass it on to you, Annie, to talk about things I know that are important to all of us. And we care deeply about kids and family across the state and want to know what they're experiencing as well. So thanks for being here and thanks for being patient.
Thank you, Senator Wilson. I'm not in a hurry, and I have a brief PowerPoint, and I wanted to leave a lot of space for questions, and so I'm not concerned about the time. So thank you so much. Thank you for having me. Thank you to the Oversight Board for having me present. So I just wanted to give you a little bit of background about myself. I've worked as a dependency attorney since 2008 when I graduated law school. I started my career in New York City representing parents. And then I moved back home. I'm from Seattle. I grew up in Burien, Washington, and I came back home and I started my own practice. And I started representing parents and children in Washington State and King County in dependency cases. Then I joined LCYC in July of 2020. And I wanted to introduce LCYC primarily because I wanted you to have some context about why we are being vocal about supporting 1227, 6109, and our very, very strong concerns about the rise of critical incidents. We are very concerned. So, LCYC is a legal nonprofit organization. We provide direct legal services, we do systemic advocacy, and we build strong community partnerships to protect the interests and safety of youth. So our clients are all children and youth across Washington State in multiple counties. Not every county, but we're in many counties in various different programs. So our four main practice areas are child welfare. Oh, can you change the slide? Sorry, I forgot I didn't have control. So our four main practice areas are child welfare, juvenile court, youth and family immigration, and youth homelessness. And so we have attorneys doing these different areas of work throughout the state. Next slide, please. So when we have been involved with the Keeping Families Together Coalition since I started. I started being involved with the Keeping Families Together Coalition before I joined LCYC, and then continued on the work when I joined LCYC in July of 2020. And the goals for what we were thinking at the time, so this was in mid 2020, was to safely reduce the number of children in foster care since it has been so clear that family separation has a severe impact on a child's well-being and future outcomes. We still see it today, especially with our older youth, and the children exiting out of foster care into extended foster care. And then also to reduce the disproportionate effect on Black and Native families. The disproportionate effect on Black and Native families has been a recurring pattern since the beginning of the child welfare system. Next slide, please. So sorry, my dog just sped into the room. What does 1227 do? It changed the standard of removal from serious threat of substantial harm to imminent physical harm. And that's in line with the longstanding ICWA standard. So Washington has been implementing or applying this imminent physical harm standard for a very long time for Native American children. And so it was not a new standard that the courts were unfamiliar with, but it was bringing that standard to the rest of the population. It requires the evidence to show a causal connection between the conditions in the home and the risk of harm. So that creates the legal link to justify state intervention. If there was no evidence to show that the home was creating the safety issue, then there would be no reason to remove the child from the home. So there needs to be that legal nexus to connect the harm to the child to what is happening in the home. Poverty, homelessness, substance abuse, mental illness, age of the parent, single parenthood alone are insufficient to remove a child. And so this portion of the bill change or the statute basically is to say that any of these things alone cannot be the reason. So a petition cannot simply say the parent tested positive for fentanyl, and therefore we can remove the child. The facts have to say something more that affects child safety and creates that causal connection. So logically, it would just connect the parent's substance abuse, if they have a substance abuse issue, to a child safety issue. So does that make sense to everyone? Okay. So we can get back to that if you have any more questions. And the court must weigh the harm of removal against imminent physical harm. So this weighing of the harm of removal was not in the statute before, and it is now in the statute because it is so clear that children, when they are separated from their families of origin, from their parents, from their communities, that they experience a great deal of harm in various different ways. If you aren't familiar with Administrative Office of the Courts website on the harm of removal or 1227, I would encourage you to look through there because they have done a great job of pulling together material to educate the bench, meaning the judicial officers, but it is open to the public. Shelley, did you have a question?
Yes, thank you. I'm just trying to clarify. Did it used to say safety risk rather than imminent harm?
No, the standard used to be serious threat of substantial harm. So
So
if there is,
serious threat now to risk of imminent harm.
yes, imminent physical harm.
Okay, thank you.
And the other thing that 1227 did was it changed the burden of proof for relative placements. So previously, the burden was sort of informally placed on the parents or the relative to show that they were a safe person for the child to be placed with. But now DCYF has to prove that that relative is unsafe. Ruth?
Thank you. So there is abundant research showing that the harm of severe neglect over time is very damaging to children, in many ways more damaging than physical harm. And I'm just wondering how this takes that into account, or if a child who is severely neglected, if with this law, there's no way to remove them from the home.
So I will discuss that later on in another slide. However, there are ways to argue severe neglect um, in these cases to rise to the level of imminent physical harm. And I'll emphasize it more a little bit later. But what I'll say is that um, in almost every situation where there is severe neglect, there is a physical manifestation to that neglect or an imminent physical manifestation to that neglect, a physical harm manifestation. And so the way that our attorneys and LCYC has been successful in arguing these cases is to create um, that link between severe neglect and imminent physical harm. And then I would just, at the end, I wanted to emphasize that it does not change the definition of dependency. So when we're talking about 1227 and 6109, we are only talking about the initial part of the dependency hearing or the dependency legal case, and that is addressing removal from the family itself. The the dependency court case really is to determine whether a child is one, and this is the definition of dependency. One, is the child abandoned? Two, is the child abused or neglected? Or three, is there no parent to safely care for that child? And so, if that definition can continue, that definition is a different standard or a different language or a different, I guess, definition to determine whether a child is dependent. The question of removal is based on whether there's imminent physical harm. There's also another a child can be removed if a court finds imminent physical harm, as well as if there's no parent available to care for the child. Next slide, please. 6109. What does it do? In 2024, the legislature amended language in 1227 that requires the court to now give great weight to the lethality of high potency synthetic opioids and follow public health guidance when determining whether a removal of the child is necessary to prevent imminent physical harm due to child abuse or neglect. It also directed the courts to consider public health guidance, which identifies age ranges by risk level, protective factors, and supports. Next slide, please. Some of the things to consider. If parents agree to shelter care, imminent physical harm does not need to be proven. Then it is an agreed order to remove the child from the home. If there's no parent to provide supervision and care for the child, the statute carves out the ability for the court to remove that child, and imminent physical harm does not need to be proven. I think that there is some gray area to this part of the statute, but no parent, I think, is more expansive than um, a parent not being able to be located. I think no parent to provide supervision and care can be somebody who is unavailable, like let's say not just physically, but also emotionally or developmentally or um, due to some kind of disability or health issue or something of that nature. I think that if you stress the supervision and care portion of the language, then there is there are more expansive ways to argue that there's no parent available. The facts have to be presented to a court in order for the law to have a quantifiable impact on whether a child is removed or not. So one of the things that LCYC has looked at is the critical incident reports that we've had access to so far and the data of those reports. And I'm just going to jump down a couple bullet points, but with the context within the critical incidents is that only 2 cases in Q1 of 2025 made it before the court out of the many cases that were highlighted, the 22 cases. And one of those, habeas corpus was sought, which was the department sought a writ of habeas corpus to locate the family. So they went to the court and asked, we need assistance in locating this family and the children. And the court issued that writ, and law enforcement was involved, but the family was not located. And so in one of the cases, the court was involved, essentially. The court was not involved. No, wait. The court was involved. Sorry. The court was involved. And then I wanted to just wanted to expand more that imminent physical harm can be determined in many ways. And can we go to the next slide? So what I mean by that is that with severe emotional abuse, there are almost always harmful physical manifestations to emotional abuse. We've had some of our clients complain of chronic stomach aches or stomach aches that affect them at night or something like that, that is directly linked to whatever emotional abuse that they're experiencing, sleeplessness, incontinence, and most concerningly, self-harm. Self-harm is often something that we see in young people, in youth who experience severe emotional abuse. But the way that we allege it in our petitions is really to create that causal link of the self-harm that the youth is inflicting or causing to themselves and how that is linked to the conditions of the home. And so once we make that connection, then it becomes a viable pathway for a court to make the determination that this child should be removed based on imminent physical harm from the parent's care. Severe or a pattern of neglect almost always has harmful physical manifestations as well. I think that, I mean, even if you just Google this, what are physical manifestations of severe neglect? If you Google it, it's like symptoms of malnourishment or dehydration, severe diaper rash. I have seen that in many, many petitions. Severe diaper rash from like not having their diaper changed. Growth and developmental delays, medical and dental problems. So whenever there is severe neglect or a pattern of neglect, there is always a way, almost always a way. I don't want to say always because I haven't seen a case where we haven't been able to make that connection, but we are always able to make this connection that there is a physical manifestation to that neglect or to that emotional abuse. Next slide, please. So LCYC, we, as a part of our child welfare practice and our youth homelessness practice, we file, and also our immigrant youth practice, we file something called private dependencies. So the youth comes to us and says, what are my legal options? I don't have anywhere to live. I don't have anyone to take care of me. And if they've been abandoned, abused, or neglected, or that there's no parent to care for them, to provide supervision or care, then we may, based on what other options the youth has, we may file a private dependency petition. And that private dependency is filed by the youth with our assistance, and they start the case. So DCYF is not involved at this stage. Sometimes we do call the CPS intake line to try to get DCYF involved. But for the most part, the youth drives the petition being filed. And we have not had a difficult time proving imminent physical harm at all. We have been able to articulate how any kind of neglect, any kind of emotional abuse, or physical abuse has amounted or risen to the level of imminent physical harm. And I think it's important to point out that 6109 really does give the court specific direction to consider the fatality of high potency synthetic opioids and to give that great weight. And so that gives the court discretion to use the information of, for instance, fentanyl use as being a reason to connect it to a potential imminent physical harm. And what I want to point out is that when we say imminent physical harm, we don't, the statute doesn't say imminent fatal physical harm, doesn't say imminent, like extremely, like severe physical harm. It just says imminent physical harm. And so if whoever writes the petition or whoever brings the case forward can articulate the imminent physical harm and can connect it to the severe neglect or emotional abuse, then they have a pathway to have the court order the child removed from the parent's care. So we found that the court has never denied our request for removal in all the cases that we have filed. And we filed them pre-1227, and we filed many since 1227, since 1227 was implemented in July of 2023. And every time the court has found shelter care in all of our cases. So we have not found difficulty that with the court system, and we have found that the court is willing to remove children when the cases are presented before them. We don't believe that the rise of critical incidents is due to the courts. The rise of critical incidents is not due to the courts refusing to remove children. It's our belief that the courts haven't had an opportunity to evaluate some of these situations where there's high risk. So that is the end of my slides, but I wanted to have a lot of space for people to ask questions. There seems to be Danielle.
Hi, yes. So Annie, I want to preface this with I absolutely love LCYC. I have definitely referred youth to your organization before for assistance. But I am curious in mentioning that y'all have had no issues and have always been able to establish shelter care on all the cases you filed on. What do your caseloads look like for your attorneys? And like approximately how long are they able to work on those caseloads and like developing the petitions? And are y'all bound by any like timelines or limits or anything like that by to get the petition before the court?
So most of our private dependency cases are for youth ages 12 to 18. And our timelines are client specific. So it depends on the situation of the client. For instance, if they're actively homeless, that would be extremely urgent, and we would seek to file that petition within days, to have a shelter care heard within days. If we had some more time, like let's say they were staying in a shelter, but the shelter was expiring in 2 weeks, then we would have more time. And sometimes we're bound by, like, let's say a 17-year-old will be turning 18 within 6 months, but they have significant needs for placement and services, then that would be another timeline that we would consider. I saw another hand up, Ruth.
Thank you. Well, given the age group that LCYC focuses on, I'm not sure that this is a question you can answer. But if only 2 cases have come to the attention of the court, do you have any thoughts about are cases not being filed that child welfare is involved with families, but they're not filing? Or do you have any sense of the population where children are dying and being severely harmed? What's happening with them that they're not ending up before the court?
Okay. So I'll just clarify that most of our private dependencies are filed for youth ages 12 to 18. However, we represent children from 0 to 24 or 0 to 21 in our child welfare program. Um, and I can't I can't say for sure what the problem is. I have some theories about the problem. And because the cases are not making it to court, that there is something happening before the decision to file or not, file a petition or not. And I don't know if it's the families are not being identified. I don't know if it's an investigation issue. I don't know if it's a DCYF policy issue or a DCYF training issue. I'm unsure. But what I know for sure is that the cases are not coming to the courts. And when the courts do have an opportunity to evaluate cases, we are seeing in Pierce County many, many fentanyl cases, and the court almost always removes unless there are significant mitigating supports in place. Any other?
Yeah, no, I just want to say that we kind of are adjusting time and we do have time for questions. We're going to go till probably 2:05, so don't feel like you can't ask something if you want to know more. Just wanted to step in there and make sure, Annie, you knew that and that board members knew that as well.
Yeah, and I am expecting like hard questions. You guys can grill me. I want you to know, I want you to have the information. Um, and if you have doubts or questions or are skeptical, I am open to that skepticism.
I see Anna and then I see Rep.
Anna?
Yeah, thank you. I just, early on in your presentation, you had said something about fentanyl and it not being imminent danger. Because I know reading like all the critical events that happened in our report, I just noticed that there was a lot of children who had died while their parents were addicted to drugs of some sort. But I was just curious why it would not be considered imminent danger. I mean, drug
So,
use in itself would be, to me, what I see that, you can't make good choices when you're under the influence.
so I think that the carve out was that, like, let's just use substance use. Substance use alone cannot be the reason for removal. But if the petition said the parent is addicted to a substance or using the substance, that is, a mind altering substance, and they are leaving the substance out in that it's visible and it is accessible to children, then that would be not the sole reason. The substance abuse would not be the sole reason. It would be substance abuse plus the parent leaving the substance out, or substance abuse plus um, the parent not having insight into their addiction, for instance. Like if they were denying their substance use, but there was proof of the substance use, then that would be an additional safety consideration. If they did not have insight into their use, then that creates a safety issue.
Yes,
Does
then
that
my
make sense?
follow-up, yeah, my follow-up question then would be if they're tested for substance use, is there ever an instance where it is not considered? I mean, just addiction in itself is not imminent danger, does not, present imminent danger. You're always looking for an additional factor to that determination of the child's safety. Is that correct? And what instance would that ever be?
So let's say a parent was connected to, like, let's say it was a newborn child and that parent decided to go into inpatient program where they could take their baby. That would be an example of where a parent was actively testing positive, but then was able to, there was no imminent physical harm because they were in a mitigating sort of service that created a safety net or a safety program for them.
So thank you.
Representative Berquist?
Thank you. I was just kind of understanding what your comments were, that most of the cases don't make it to the courts, most of the critical incidents. And so does that mean they're being screened out when there's a CPS call, and then I guess what is the policy potential, or I don't know if you can speak to that or not, but what might be able to be changed? You were saying maybe some additional training or other things, but can you dig into that a little more, please?
I don't know I don't know if they are being screened out or screened in. I don't know if CPS calls are being made. Um, I think that from my understanding, it might be all across the board. It could be that some are being called in, some are being screened in, some are being screened out. And I think it's really case dependent. Um, in terms of the policy changes, KFT is so Keeping Families Together Coalition has sort of thought of various different services that can be offered and offered to parents in the initial stages of CPS investigation and that kind of thing. But it is like sort of our belief that these services and intervention would be a preventative factor.
Thank you.
Dr. Levy?
So, I have looked at some of these fatality reports, and the one thing that really strikes me is that many of the children have had multiple touch points along the line where they have had some sort of interaction with DCYF. And I'm wondering, from your experience in the legal system, is that factored in? The just sheer number of times that somebody has come into contact with DCYF. And the other, I guess, caveat I would say is that in my practice, if I have a concern about abuse, I'm told I should make a report, right? Obviously, I have to, but there is that sense of like things just don't go anywhere. So I don't know if you can speak to just these kind of repeat offenders, if you would.
Yeah, I think it is very concerning that there have been many touch points with the CPS investigations team in many of these critical incidents, I guess case summaries. And that is something that I don't have insider knowledge on. I don't have the inside scoop. I will let you know, being on the other side, in the past representing parents and currently representing children and supervising attorneys that do this, that the multiple CPS intakes that come in are definitely used within the context of a dependency action, a dependency court action. So a lot of times we will see a summary of the intakes, whether they were screened in or screened out, within a dependency petition. Katie?
I have just a couple rapid fire questions for you, Annie. I have heard that 1227 changed the return home policy, and so that kids who have been removed and are in out of home, even though social workers are still identifying a danger in the home or unmediated safety issues, that 1227 made it so that they have to send kids home in unsafe situations. Is that true?
So just to create some clarity, 1227 only addresses initial removal. So once a case is going and when the court is deciding to return a child home, there is a different standard. And they go into a trial return home period for 6 months. The dependency cannot be dismissed for 6 months for general supervision of the family after they return home. But the decision to return the child home from the court is dependent on whether the reasons for removal no longer exist. And so that's what the attorneys will be arguing. So the department can argue that the reasons for removal continue to exist, and the parents' attorneys could argue that the reasons for removal no longer exist. And that's when the court can return a child, is if the reasons for removal no longer exist. That's remedied usually by participation in services, engagement with the department, completing certain types of evaluations that sort of clear up any issues, and observations or experience with the children, with their parents, and not observing any safety issues. Those are the things I can think of off the top of my head.
But altering or repealing 1227 would have no impact on that part of the statute.
No, it's a completely different part of the statute.
Okay.
I
Go ahead.
believe Dr. Dahan?
Annie, thank you, by the way, for all this information. It's really, really helpful. I appreciate it. One of the things that people say publicly is that there's a causal connection between the rise in critical incidents and the passage of 1227. What's the most useful response, a clear response to that? You seem very, very clear that they're unrelated. And why do you think that?
Well, I think that one, our entire nation, our state, is dealing with an opioid epidemic that is affecting all demographics. It's across the board, in all socioeconomic spans or ranges of people. And the way that we have seen our cases in the courts being, I guess, litigated or presented, and the courts deciding to remove the children tells me 1227 is not the problem to the rise of children dying from high potency synthetic opioids. And we at LCYC are very, very interested in finding a solution or finding a way to address the problem that will have a real impact on the problem.
I see. Thank you. And just one last follow-up question. Do you know off the top of your head what's happened to court filings during since 1227? Have they gone down as a proportion of open cases at the agency? Is that a problem that's just not getting to court?
So the number of filings have been decreasing since before 1227. So I would say 2019, 2020, 2021, 2022, that you've seen a decline in the number of filings across the state. After 1227, they did decline through 2023. In 2024, we saw an uptick with the rise in fentanyl use. And then in 2025, so far, we have seen an increase almost back to pre-1227 levels.
I see.
So
Good.
it did dip and then it has increased again.
I see. Great. Thank you very much.
All right, Senator
Senator.
Christian, you're going to close us out. We're at 2:05, so I'm going to let you have the last question. And Annie, you're going to wrap it up, and then we'll move on to our panel. Thanks.
Madam Chair. I guess mine's a series of small, quick questions leading up to the end. So did LCYC have involvement in advocating for passage of 1227?
Yes.
Okay. Is Washington State higher than the nation, or are we on lower as far as infant mortality?
I believe it is not higher. So either the same or lower.
We're on track with the rest of the nation as far as since this 1227 came in play. We're on track with the rest of the nation. Are the rest of the nation's having record numbers of children dying because of fentanyls in the home, let's say? So that's what I mean. Your testimony is that Washington State is not any higher than anyone else. So our records of a number of deaths is average with the rest of the nation, is what I'm hearing your testimony today.
I think
So-
she's giving testimony. I want to be really clear on this.
Yep.
Annie's doing a presentation. Just want to make
Okay.
sure it's clear.
Got it.
Yeah,
Okay.
and
Thank you. Thank you.
and if I was testifying, I wouldn't be able to swear to this
Okay.
piece of the information because I am not sure. But what I read last week was that Washington State is not significantly higher in child fatalities at this moment in time. And that child fatalities are increasing across the nation because of the same exposure to fentanyl.
And I'm just a simple guy. I hate to say it. I'm not, an expert, let's say, where you are and you've dedicated your life. My simple mind says if we've had more deaths since we've implemented this higher standard, we should be addressing maybe changing that standard. And that's my simple mind. And I appreciate your work, but I'm also concerned that we're more concerned with children's mind and well-being, but it's really hard to be concerned with a child's well-being when they're dead. We prioritize protecting the child from dying, not long-term mental health issues. And I do appreciate your work and appreciate you talking to me about this.
Thank you. I'll just close out by saying that I believe that the rise of critical incidents is something that we absolutely need to address. I want to address it in a way where it will have an impact on actually decreasing children dying or nearly dying. And so I don't believe changing the law or focusing our energy and changing the law is going to get us there. And I would like to focus on solutions that will get us to a point where children are safer and not at risk of dying. Thank you.
Thanks. Annie, thanks so much for being here. And I know if there are other questions board members have, that if you send them to Lisha, we can send them on to Annie. And I know she'd be happy to share any other information. And again, folks are coming to present to us what they have expertise around. And so I know they really do appreciate the tough questions. And it's a greater good that we're looking for and changes in systems that have oftentimes negatively impacted kids and families across our state. So next up, so I really want to say yay and thanks so much, Annie, for joining us. And next up, I have the honor of welcoming a panel of critical incident service providers. And I'm going to let Katie take it away. And we know Katie Byron very well as a colleague and a board member. So Katie, it's all yours.
All right. Thank you very much, Senator Wilson and the rest of the board members. I am excited today to bring you a panel of individuals who serve these vulnerable populations that we're talking about. Every single person on this panel, none of us want to see children dying, harmed, anything like that. And so this panel is really here to bring their grassroots expertise, what they see every day, the families they're talking to, so that we can identify solutions so that children are not dying or being harmed. And so with that, I am going to introduce this panel. The questions for the panel were developed by the co-chairs, and so I will be facilitating those questions. We are going to start with Adam Ballou. Adam, could you please describe your program, introduce yourself, tell us what you do, who you serve, how parents get referred, and the key outcomes associated with your work?
Thank you, Katie. My name's Adam Ballou. I'm an attorney with the First Legal Clinic. The First Clinic stands for Family Intervention Response to Stop Trauma. I've been a public defender since 2007. I've been appointed to represent parents and also children in dependency cases. So I show up at that initial shelter care hearing after parents have already lost custody of their child. And for doing that work for a long time and feeling that as I'm reading these petitions, if I could have intervened earlier, practically weeks, hours, days earlier, we likely wouldn't be in the situation that we were in. And as was mentioned earlier, there were several touch points on these cases where if an intervention occurred, the trajectory of the family and the trajectory of the case would likely go in a completely different direction. And so after hearing that in 2018, there were between 15 and 20 infants removed from our local hospital every month, we got together in a work group with Gina Wassermiller, who's our parent ally with our clinic, and approached our local hospital with an idea of creating a medical legal partnership where referrals would come in for anyone who was concerned about a pregnant family. And then they would get paired with both an attorney and a parent ally, a parent with lived experience who's been through the process before, who's had dealings with CPS, who can create an instant rapport with the parent, and from a place of non-judgment, figure out a true assessment of what the family needs and then help get that. So that can be a drug and alcohol assessment, that can be getting to treatment, that can be helping finding safety plan participants, creating a safety plan, creating a relapse prevention plan, so that when the department shows up and knocks on their door after they've been giving birth at their hospital room, there isn't a feeling of fight or flight or freeze that comes up because we've had an opportunity to talk about this months prior to the current intervention point. In 2019, when we started, we were one of 2 clinics in the country to do this work. We're now one of 34. So our clinic has become a national model where we travel to other states to help them stand up their clinics by bridging silos, which typically don't work together. Nursing, public health, social work, medicine, and law are their own silos. And so by going into these through the academic space and actually in the workspace, having all staff meetings with the department, creating a relationship with community-based providers, we see a completely different level of engagement with our clients. So our work is paired with a parent ally, and that is Gina Wassermiller, Jennifer Justice, who was the 17th mom that our clinic was able to help, and then Tashara, who was the 517th mom that our client was able to help. So the families that we're able to help avoid the CPS process, it's not just a temporary thing. This is changing the trajectory of the family. And what we see is who is asking and who is doing the assessment on the family really matters. One of our biggest partners is PCAP during our screening portion, and Dr. Stoner is here from PCAP. This is just to say that we work hand in hand with so many community partners and so many valuable community partners, so that the old model of a parent showing up alone at a meeting with CPS is replaced by a model of coming up with a plan and not shutting the door in the social worker's face, but we have 100% engagement with the department. So it is, let us come up with a plan to figure out, these are what the department's expectations are. These are what the acronyms that are going to be thrown at you are. These are what the safety expectations are. Let's go through them together, and then let's come up with a plan that's going to be workable. And so what that means is 79% of our families have no CPS filing of a dependency case, no removal of their infant from their care. And a third of those families grew up in care or had some involvement of the department when they were younger. So we're seeing a real breaking of a cyclical pattern of systemic entry and reentry. from families. It is normal for somebody that's had trauma in the past to have a wall up when that happens, but helping negotiate that before a crisis, really in pre-crisis, is what our clinic is about and stands for.
Thank you so much, Adam. Heather, I'm going to toss it over to you.
Okay. Hi, my name is Heather Cantamessa, and I am a parent ally. I also serve as the director of Family Impact, overseeing the Parents for Parents program, or P4P, as many people call it. For those of you that don't know what P4P is, it's in its 20th year since creation, and it's a voluntary court-based peer mentor and education. Sorry, my voice is. I'm going to do this. And it's also a professional development program that's designed and led by parent allies, all with lived experience in the child welfare system. They've successfully resolved their own dependency cases, and they intuitively know how to help parents in a way that's empowering, and they're trained to walk alongside parents the most critical moments right when the dependency case begins. So it's not as far forward as Adam was talking about the first clinic is, but parents deserve and need support at these most critical moments. And we serve all families who enter the dependency court system. Parent allies meet with parents as early as possible after the petition is filed. They offer immediate support, and they invite them to a one-time 2-hour educational class that is led by a parent ally, speaks the language, demystifies court roles, has court professionals come in and speak to their role, and help parents understand what they need to do to preserve their families, reunify, or just navigate the complex systems that they find themselves in. And beyond the initial engagement with P4P, parent allies are providing education, ongoing mentoring, resource navigation, emotional support throughout the entire case. And it's a lighter touch, and it's one-on-one, it's in-person, electronic, it's all groups so that they can build a community and get engaged with the community. And it just really helps families engage more effectively especially in the services that they're already required to complete, and then some. P4P is available statewide. There are 12 locally based programs that serve 33 counties, and there are a few counties without a program, but families can still access the program through virtual support out of neighboring counties, and that we really want to ensure that there is no family that is completely without access. And parents self-refer, but we also do informal referrals, like through court and community partners, or we meet with them in person at, as early as possible in their case, at their first court hearing, at a meeting, at a service, and we invite them to connect with us. We exchange contact information, and that's when we're really unable to, get their contact information another way. And their participation with P4P is always voluntary. They are in P4P when they need P4P, and it seems to really work because it's evidence supported. There's been multiple evaluations spanning over the last 15 years. NCJF, CJ, the Chapin Hall, and the Child Welfare Capacity Building Center for Courts have evaluated it, and they show consistent outcomes. Increased parental engagement in not only court-ordered services, but all along the way of a dependency, increased trust in the system and themselves in navigating the system, and then significantly improve permanency outcomes. So when parents receive the full P4P model, just like the first clinic, their reunification rates increase to nearly 80%, 79%, and termination of parental rights decrease substantially. And at Akin, we have, yeah. We
Thank
just, at
you.
Akin, we provide statewide oversight, training, fidelity support, and ensure that P4P remains parent-led, equitable, and responsive to the local community needs.
Thank you so much, Heather. Ray.
Yeah, hi. My name's Ray Deck. I'm the founder and CEO at Skookum Kids. We're a child welfare organization based in Bellingham, and we've been operating for the last 12 years. We have a range of programs, including an emergency shelter for children who are, and many of them are in protective custody, or they're making a similar transition from somewhere unsafe to a different living situation. We also train, license, and support foster families to be enthusiastic champions of reunification. And we facilitate family time services, both for the children placed in our homes and children placed in state licensed homes. And we also provide in-home services, including family preservation services, or FPS. And I think this last area is maybe the reason I'm here today. Our in-home services, it's the area the agency is growing the fastest. And to our supporters and members of the public, I describe it as alternatives to traditional removal and placement foster care. But of course, we all know that in-home services are deployed in a lot of different ways, and including as an alternative to dependency, but also in support of a dependency proceeding, to encourage the reunification goal, and sometimes as a support to kinship caregivers or families who are on a trial return home. In addition to my leadership of the agency, I'm also a therapist myself, and personally carry FPS cases. In fact, as soon as I'm done here, I'm going to get in the car and go visit a family. So where do our cases come from? So in-home services cases, FPS and otherwise, are referred to us exclusively by DCYF. And as to outcomes, the most important measurement of success for us agency-wide is reunification rate, or the percentage of dependent families that we interact with who successfully navigate the child welfare system and get their kids back out of care. And alternatively, for families referred to us as an alternative to dependency, we're interested in what percentage of those families manage to avoid further future CPS involvement.
Thank you, Ray. And is FPS a service that's available statewide?
FPS is available statewide, yes.
Thank you. Jessica.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Jessica Humphreys. I am with the Jamestown S'Klallam tribe. I'm also a tribal member and a descendant of the Makah tribe. I'm very happy to be here. Thank you. So our programs for the tribe are pretty expansive. We're a small tribe in Sequim, Washington, but we have a lot of representation and have done a lot of great work in child welfare. Our tribe as a whole is, we have a healing clinic that does a lot of work with our families. Within the healing clinic, they do medication dosing, parent classes, cultural classes, and we support a lot of our family and community members in that way. Behavioral health, dental, just the kind of range of health clinics within the tribe. Social services, we also have our case management for adults, housing, transitional shelters, food programs, and my portion of it is family services. I deal directly with our youth programs, Indian child welfare, and higher education. So within the ICW realm, we work a lot with policy, state policy. We've gotten a chance to work on the ICW policies over the years, case reviews. We also work with our families, preventative services within the tribe. That is one of our biggest, I would say, goals is to prevent CPS intervention and kind of keep our families together. The way that our families are referred to us is they're tribal citizens. And, we really value their um, um, oh,
Oh, thank you so much, Jessica. We look forward to hearing more from you in just a bit. And finally, I'm going to close out this question with Dr. Susan Stoner.
Hi, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here today. I am the director of the Washington State Parent-Child Assistance Program, or PCAP. PCAP is a voluntary 3-year intensive case management program for pregnant and parenting individuals up to 2 years postpartum who report at-risk substance use during their most recent pregnancy. Our primary mission is to reduce the likelihood that future children will be exposed to alcohol or drugs prenatally. And we do that by assigning the birthing parent with a bachelor's level case manager who helps them to build recovery capital and healthy family lives through recovery support services. So we link clients to needed and desired resources like SUD and mental health treatment, other healthcare, housing, education, employment, legal services, DV services, and so on. We elicit clients' goals and support them in taking action steps towards those goals. We do not monitor parenting practices per se, but we are mandated reporters. So when we see something concerning, we do make reports. Our benchmark is for case managers to meet with each client twice per month in the client's own home or local community. Our key outcomes are related to reduced likelihood of future substance-exposed pregnancy, and those are abstinence from substance use and use of reliable contraception, first and foremost, but also SUD treatment engagement, linkage to services, and other indicators of parent and child well-being. We don't require clients to embrace abstinence, but we do view abstinence from substance use as the pinnacle of harm reduction. PCAP receives referrals from DCYF, healthcare providers, SUD treatment providers, the First Clinic and other attorneys, the courts, family services, and other social services agencies. We also accept self-referrals. PCAP officially serves 20 counties, but extends our reach to adjacent counties when feasible. So although we're not available in all 39 counties, we do serve the areas of the state where over 90% of the state population lives.
Thank you so much. And what are the outcomes for families that participate in PCAP?
We are primarily interested in substance use disorder, treatment engagement, abstinence from substance use, linkage to services, and in other indicators of child and parent well-being.
And I assume those all go up when families participate and have the support from PCAP?
They do. I do say we only get self-report data from clients when they enroll in the program and at the end of the 3-year program. Given the nature of substance use disorders and just life in general, we do have about 40% of clients who enroll in the program who don't make it to the end of the 3 years. And unfortunately, we don't have opportunities to hear directly from them throughout the program, but we do have case manager reports. So they're giving us sort of their knowledge of how clients are doing. We do see in those who make it to the end of the program very outcomes that we're proud of in terms of with large proportions receiving SUD treatment, achieving permanent stable housing, furthering their education, increasing their employment, and things of that nature.
Thank you so very much.
Okay.
So for the next questions, I'm going to popcorn it. We're going to go in the same order. So Adam, you will be up first. I have 2 questions. What is the biggest need that you are seeing not be met or is not consistently met for families and children? And I want to know, especially as we go into legislative session and we start talking about what can we do to help, concrete things, are you adequately funded?
Okay. We are adequately funded now. I think our hope And what we're seeing is that there will be some more funding for housing and more funding for treatment, specifically inpatient treatment for parenting families. And so I think we see a huge gap there where the need just does not match what is available. And so families are having to wait for those services. So I think access to inpatient and housing are going to be key.
Thank you. Heather.
I think the biggest thing that we see with parents coming into the system is that they're waiting for critical services that to help stabilize their family, and they're sitting on wait lists for really important basic needs, but also substance use treatment, mental health services, family-centered supports that are either not available or they're not available at the speed and scale that families are needing it. So parents are like in a time crunch, and they have there's a lot of expectations, and they're supposed to demonstrate progress while waiting on the system. And it can be slow and not accessing services. So we're not being able to access services. And I feel like what makes the biggest difference is really consistent relational support. People who understand the system, who have proximate experience or equivalent compassionate investment, and know how to navigate all the resources in today's economic reality. So I feel like all these programs on this panel right now are just a really good example of utilizing peer supports in their models to be able to, many of the panelists to be able to support families in short-term interventions that really lend to the long-term successes, and peers bridge that gap, and we make sure that families get from one service to the next, and then are embedded in the community with positive supports that are truly needed. And
Heather?
Yeah.
Is P4P adequately funded in all 39 counties?
No, it's not funded at a level that fully meets the need, but we do a lot. You get a lot of bang for your buck with P4P because we're a lighter touch, and we do cover every family in the jurisdiction. But definitely we see a consistent need to be able to. We can do more, right?
Excellent. I think investing in the programs that are working and making sure those who are doing the work, such as parent allies, are getting paid for their work so that they are able to meet a standard of living. Ray, next up is you.
Yeah, there's two things, two gaps I see. So first, the bottleneck in the availability of FPS is in the workforce. FPS providers are all Department of Health credentialed mental and behavioral health professionals, so therapists or social workers. And we just aren't able to recruit and retain enough excellent FPS clinicians to meet the demand for that service. FPS is a client-driven service, meaning that it's flexible enough to meet the needs of multi-stressed families, no matter how complex the case is. But it takes a special kind of clinician to do that well, someone with a breadth of skill, and that's counter to the inertia and the rest of the industry. There's this pressure on behavioral health clinicians to specialize, to pick a specific population or issue to be an expert in. And there's good reasons, right, why therapists used to do that. But excellence in FPS requires you to do the opposite. You have to be a generalist. The best FPS clinicians are generalists. So finding and keeping that very specific kind of clinician has been a challenge. If it's interesting to the board, I can elaborate on the specific reasons why it's been difficult. But the result is that FPS is sometimes not available for all the families who would benefit from it because there aren't enough skilled, experienced FPS clinicians. The second gap I would mention is that I regularly hear from sister organizations like school districts or licensed childcare providers, tribes, municipalities, et cetera, who would really like to refer to in-home services directly without involving DCYF, but they aren't able to do that. And the thinking's pretty common sense that as a social worker or a school counselor or somebody, an adult in a family's life, can see that things aren't great and they'd really like to cause some support to arrive without making a CPS call or sort of fending off the need to make a future CPS call. And that makes a ton of sense. And unfortunately, like people call me about that, I cannot say yes because the in-home services contract dictates that we can only take cases referred from DCYF. So working as far upstream as I'd like to, it would require a separate funding source that I haven't found yet. So I wish, sure, go ahead.
No, thank you. You can tell us your wish.
Yeah, I wish that the funding for prevention services like this reached further upstream than the investigation and surveillance apparatus did.
Yeah. No one wants to see families fail. Certainly not have to watch them fail when their supports are out there. Jessica.
Apologies, I'm not feeling very well, but I'm going to push through it. So I went off camera for a second.
It's all right.
No, yeah, it's just that time of year. I feel like we've gotten cold after cold. But anyway, from my perspective, in our rural Clallam County, FPS is a huge need. Anything in home that can help families stay together, anything that works directly with the family on intensive skills, kind of that, and housing. Housing is a critical need that we see in rural areas like Clallam County. The wait lists are long. The process is difficult and cumbersome for families who are newly reunified or newly sober, both. So that is the biggest need that we see.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And Dr. Stoner.
I'm told that there remains a critical need for more PPW beds for SUD treatment. I'm hearing it sometimes takes a long time to go from detox to a treatment bed, during which time clients are at very high risk of relapse. Likewise, they're ongoing.
Real quick, if
Sure.
you define PPW for people who have no idea.
Oh, sure. Pregnant and parenting women is what PPW stands for. And it refers to residential treatment where mothers and children are able to stay together. Thank you for calling me out on that. So we definitely need more PPW beds. And likewise, there are ongoing needs for expanded access to behavioral health care. I'm told there needs to be more support for transitional housing and expanding the criteria for housing so women and children don't have to prove homelessness to qualify for housing beyond shelters. And there should be more options for families to be housed together. I'm hearing people are choosing to remain in unsafe situations rather than be separated from their partner. I'm hearing that outpatient services should be required to complement MOUD or medications for opioid use disorder. Our clients who use fentanyl are viewed as needing longer voluntary agreements with more monitoring and more services. And then finally, I'll mention, childcare remains as a needed service. And I'm told that when clients call the DCYF number to get working connections childcare, they go through this lengthy automated process where information is entered. And at the end of that, there's a message indicating high call volumes, and then the call is terminated. And there's no workaround for this to get an actual person on the phone or a way to complete the process online. And so I understand understand we've had at least one client who had to work on securing this childcare for over a month so she could go to SUD treatment. And many clients don't have that capacity to keep trying over and over, and they just give up. So, these clients then would lose their treatment bed. So we have to be able to provide timely support.
Thank you so much. All right. And in our last 5 minutes, I'm going to give you each a minute. What is the one most important thing you will ask the legislature to do to greatly reduce critical incidents going into this session? Adam?
So I think in a minute I could do three because I think there's not one single approach. I think expanding PCAP statewide is critical. The amount of places that don't have PCAP, I think making PCAP statewide. Two, having paid safety plan participants that DCYF can pay for to avoid the filing of dependency, because so many cases come into dependency because we can't find even one 24-hour safety plan participant to monitor or help get a safety plan in place. And then the third one would be eliminating the barrier that there needs to be a finding of dependency before going into drug court or another therapeutic court service. Maybe we can use the actual entry of the family and participation in drug court as a way to prevent a dependency filing from occurring, having some motivation to work with the family versus having that be a hurdle to getting into drug court. So maybe working to have at the shelter care process, a family being able to be diverted into the drug court process, successfully complete that, and then graduate and have a dismissal without a finding of dependency versus with one.
I'm going to ask you with my 1 minute, when you say paid safety plan participant, what
Yes.
are you referring to?
Yes. So sometimes the department will require what's called 24-hour supervision for a family that might be struggling with a parenting issue. So they will say, do you have any safety plan participants that can be in the home to monitor that that the safety plan is being complied with? And if a family does not have the resources or does not know anyone, our clinic has been very creative about trying to find former nurses, former social workers, former foster parents that are willing to open up their home or to come in and be in the home. And those are safety plan participants. If the department could pay for those, home visiting program would be one, for example, or another to come into the home that could prevent the need for the department to say, we can't safety plan with this participant or this family because we don't have anyone to help onto the safety plan. Therefore, we have to go to court. And then there's tremendously more expense with foster care in that downstream process.
Thank you. Thank you. I like the upstream recommendations coming from this panel. Heather.
So I feel like I would ask for continuity, connection, and the strengthening of relational peer informed programs. We need programs that support families, with that continuity at different points and throughout their lives, when they're raising children. And from my experience, families do this better when the supports don't operate in a silo. And when the programs represented, like on this panel, have short-term interventions with long-term, solutions and communities that will help families, get to the next appropriate stage of empowerment and build their self-efficacy instead of having them navigate this all by themselves.
So really, kind of like Adam said, funding individuals who can walk alongside families and help them get through this challenging time.
Absolutely.
Ray.
Yeah, I would say, so regarding FPS, we are constantly competing for talent against easier jobs that pay better. And, for a clinician to choose to do that, experienced, capable clinician who could definitely make it in private practice, to choose to make a career doing FPS, they have to make that choice of contrary to their own financial interests. When FPS providers choose not to sort of leave that field, and sort of often it's to private practice. The number one most common reason is I'm tired of dealing with DCYF, candidly. And the second most common reason is money. I have a private practice, and if I had a full caseload of cash pay private practice clients relative to a full caseload of FPS clients, the difference in revenue to me is about $120,000 a year. The difference. So, that's like that is a big choice to make, right? To sort of build your career around FPS. Behavioral health is a field, like a lot of fields, it has a pay your dues phase, which implies the existence of a collect your dues phase. And I think we probably need to decide collectively, like which of those two phases do we want FPS to exist in? Is this an exercise in doing harder than average work for lower than average pay in order to unlock future potential for yourself? Or is this a financially lucrative opportunity because it's hard and we want to attract the very best people to doing the job? Right now it's the former, and I suspect maybe we would prefer it to be the latter.
Wow, those are some shocking numbers. And yeah, the sacrifice for someone to take that big of a pay cut, particularly in today's economy, that's a lot to ask someone. And then the work is very hard. Jessica.
I have to say, I love Adam's suggestion about paying somebody for the safety plan because having that robust safety plan is so important. And that's often where there's a little bit of a miss. I would say funding anything that has to do with housing programs. I'm going to stick with housing. It's one of our largest barriers, and possibly housing with programs and services wrapped into the model.
Thank you. I'm curious, when you all talk about housing, what is the wait for a family who has a barrier of housing? Are we talking 3 weeks to housing?
No, I'm 8 months currently, like on Peninsula Housing Authority. To get into low income housing, there's 8 month wait in one of the complexes. I'm not sure what the other one is. But we have FUB vouchers for our families that are being reunified, and you can also use them to prevent the breakup of the home. But to get a house that is it within that cost frame for the FUP voucher is also a little bit tricky, but there's no housing available for the families who do receive vouchers from DCYF. So it's kind of the circular issue.
Where do they live in the interim?
In their cars. We have a transitional shelter that has 6 rooms. That is it. And then our Serenity House, our local shelter, is full most nights, and a lot of people just don't want to stay there.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. I also wonder if we have any opportunities for dads to stay with their children. I understand the importance of keeping mom and a child together, but I also know there's some single dads out there rocking it. And do they have places they can stay with their children? Dr. Stoner.
It's interesting that you mentioned dads because that's one thing that has been raised as far as PCAP goes, is that PCAP really focuses on the mother due to our emphasis on reducing future substance exposed pregnancy, and historically we've viewed that as really needing to come through the mother because dads don't give birth. However, there are a lot of single dads out there who do need support. So one way PCAP could address this problem with additional funding from the legislature would be to expand our eligibility criteria. So at this time, we are limited to birthing parents who are pregnant or up to 2 years postpartum, and they have to have substance use during their most recent pregnancy. If we expanded the eligibility criteria to be, any perinatal substance use disorder or older age of a child, or even just being in your childbearing years, for example, and having a substance use disorder or concerningly at-risk substance use, we could serve more people. And I agree, sort of expanding to counties where we aren't already serving people would be really valuable.
Thank you. So what I heard from all of you over and over and over is what families need to be successful is voluntary services, early engagement with individuals who have walked this path before and can say, I don't know exactly what you're going through, but I went through something similar, and I am here to offer hope. We're not going to solve everything, but I am here to be with you and offer hope, and really meeting families where they're at as early as possible. And with that, I am going to open up questions to the board. You have 20 minutes with these amazing individuals, and I will just let you raise your hand and I will call on you accordingly. While you're thinking about whether or not you want to raise your hands, Shelley put a question in about what percentage of the families you work with are impacted by DV, and just bouncing off something we were just talking about, are there equitable services for men and women? I'll let one or two of you answer Shelley's question.
I can take a stab here. Thank you for the question. So I don't have a statistic off the top of my head. I'll have to check with our agency's data team. That's a joke. I'm the data team. I can think of several clients recently who sort of have been DV involved. It is common, right? It is sort of a common factor that's in the mix. And it regularly emerges as often it's not sort of part of the original referral information, but we sort of discover it, right? Often we discover that, the referral information will be about housing, right? Or housing instability. And then as we get to know the family, we learn that the reason that their housing was unstable was they were fleeing domestic violence, right? So it's often sort of discovered later. As to the question about gender equitability in services, no, there are some really great providers who sort of specialize in male victims of domestic violence, but it's less common, and so the providers who specialize in it are sort of a little harder to find. There are a few, but they're harder to find.
Thank you so much, Ray. I also got permission to go to 320. So we have brilliant, brilliant minds on this panel. This is our opportunity as a board to learn from them. Dr. Levy.
Well, first of all, I want to thank you all for your hard work in what is often a very thankless field. So you're not getting the big bucks, but we really do appreciate you all. My question is, many of you, if not all of you, talk about your programs as being voluntary. And one of the things that has struck me when I've reviewed some of the near fatalities is that there are numerous families who choose voluntary services or don't. But then if they choose voluntary services, they kind of fall out. And I think Dr. Stoner, you mentioned 40% don't make it to the end of PCAP programming. So my question is, what happens to that cohort that falls out of voluntary services? Does that have impact on their cases? Is that considered a red flag? What happens to those groups?
We have a lot of time, so I'm going to let you all just popcorn and answer.
I can answer for parents, because I think it's a really great question. And for what we know is that some parents, they have the support, or they contact us when they need support. They get the information needed from us, and we also provide it in so many ways. And we'll contact them, they'll contact us, and it's all with their permission. And they navigate the system and can be successful too. And other times it's that we're asking them to come to a 2-hour class that is really a crash course on the system that, is spoken in their language and everything they need to know. But, they have so many other court-ordered services that are, they're critical to them getting reunified with their children, and they're stressed out. And we really do our best to offer anything that any support we give virtually by phone, text. And I feel like that's one reason why it's so successful. And it really helps when we have partners that are helping, that are kind of, we give credibility to each other, right? Like as parents that have been through the system, many of us have been through PCAP, we've been through FPS. So when we get a call, we're saying, hey, maybe reach out. And another thing about our program is we don't drop parents when they don't have contact. And I think that helps with them, staying engaged because it's on their terms and it's not the criteria of a model. But parents are stressed out in these situations and they have a lot on their shoulders, that there are a lot of expectations, high stakes. And sometimes that causes that trauma response of a freeze, right? And a disengagement. So it's a lot of thoughtful work, right? To stay relevant and be beneficial to families throughout this process.
No, thank you so much, Heather. Adam, I am curious with this question. If we were to look at expanding the first clinic model similarly, what is that first call that you all make to families where you are getting engagement? You are getting families to voluntarily work with the department. Who is making that call? And how can we visualize doing that with more families?
Great question. We get a lot of calls from Swedish, our local hospital, Dr. Walsh, and his crew there of fantastic fellows we have a great working relationship with. If we get a referral, and also our parent allies will physically go to the hospitals. And so a lot of this is in person. And so when a referral comes in, and that can be from DCYF also, we get screened out intakes from the department as well as part of a pilot program. So it can be from anyone in the community. And so when we do get that call, parents are screened in. We take down data and information about their background, if they've had any prior dependencies, what services they're already connected with, if they're connected with WIC, TANF, PCAP. And then we have a warm handoff. So during that call, the parent ally joins the call. We don't like sending parents away with a list and a sheet of things to call and this idea of a scavenger hunt. We will make those calls together. And so we eliminate those barriers. I'll merge in a parent ally, have that warm handoff and connection made right there. And then it is clear that after they are screened in, they know from that point on, if the department is coming, that they're represented, that they can get us on the phone. We've had good relationships with the department so that we can also reach out and say, hey, when you're ready to come out and see this parent, we can help coordinate that. So eliminating hurdles of giving people phone numbers to call, sending people to locations, those are all things that we try to cut out with our referral process.
How could we do that with families that are not going to touch the medical system necessarily? We do have some where reports are coming from pediatricians, but these high-risk families that are most of the critical incidents.
Yes. And so
that
for the
voluntary service line that's not quite going to court for the dependencies. Right. So how do we help these families?
I think having lived experience be the voice that they hear on the other line. The voice of a parent that's been through that before. It creates such a huge rapport that would otherwise take such a long time to go through. And I see it physically on the clients' bodies relax when they hear Jennifer or Gina say, I used during my pregnancy, I've been where you are. I know the feeling that you're having right now. I promise that you're gonna be okay and we're gonna work through this. Their buy-in at that point is not something I feel like the department has in their tool belt or can offer, because they're the same agency that has previously potentially taken them from their parent or a child from them. And so having the voice of lived experience be the voice that reaches out through also non-judgment I think is the key to engagement. And I think that's why the responsive numbers when lived experience reaches out, like one of our parent allies, are so much higher.
Thank you.
I feel there's some success when the tribe also reaches out and has that tribal social worker there because we walk hand in hand, whether it's voluntary or it's CPS, we are there. So if your client has a tribe, I would say getting that tribal social worker who knows the family, knows history, and knows the community is another good resource just to trusting that person.
Thank you. Dr. Stoner.
I just want to circle back to Dr. Levy's question related to mandated, voluntary versus mandated. I mean, as a psychologist and a scientist, I feel like this is really kind of an empirical question. Unfortunately with PCAP, we only hear directly from clients when they enroll and when they exit the program. We don't have an intent to treat design. And one thing that I would like to implement and could do with more funding would be to get more self-report data from clients at more frequent times during the program so I can sort of better gauge, hear from them directly and better gauge sort of how they're doing. Even if they don't make it to the end of the 3-year program, I'd like to think that people are doing better even after 1 year or 2 years in our program, even if they don't make it to the end. But people do disengage for a variety of reasons. One that I sometimes hear is that because they stayed engaged as long as they thought it would help their CPS case. And when they felt that was no longer the case, they disengaged. And so there might be a case to be made for mandating participation in the program, but whether that actually translates into better outcomes is an empirical question. As a psychologist, I'd like to tend to think that sort of having intrinsic motivation is more predictive of long-term substance use disorder recovery, but that's not the only outcome that we're interested in here today. We're also interested in child safety. So I just wanted to say that.
Thank you so much. Ruth, I saw you had your hand up and then it went down. Now it's back up.
Thank you, Katie. Well, I just want to reinforce thanks to every one of you for the tremendous work you do. And I really want to congratulate Adam. When this first clinic was launched, it was quite a struggle. And the department was not supportive. And I'm really hearing in your comments, Adam, that the department is very supportive now and actually using you to refer families before they come into the system. So I just want you to talk a little bit about that because that is a prevention strategy that could, I think, really help address some of the concerns we're hearing.
Thank you so much, Representative Kagan. Thank you for your support in the early days when we came to you with this idea. When we first started, our relationship with the department was not good at all. In fact, they asked the hospital not to refer cases to us until they had an opportunity to meet with our families. Fast forward to now, we're being invited by the King County offices to come into their all-staff meetings. And if we're not part of a family, they'll call us and say, hey, can you meet us at the hospital to work with this family? And that came through building the bridge of going to their offices and talking out what their expectations were and what our expectations were, and coming to an understanding that we care about children too. We're also the department isn't the only person that cares about children. Everyone that we work with cares about children. And can we come together to work better together? I've been an attorney since 2007. Oftentimes it felt like I was just bashing my head up against the wall, that we were showing up at the scene of the same accident every day. It was like, this is the same accident. This is the same crash site. And so I think there's also a lot of people in the department that as this has gone on, they were critics and now they're believers. And now they're our biggest proponents, the social workers that really didn't want us there in the beginning. And that's because of the outcomes. The families are ending these cases in a completely different relationship with the department. We have updates where the social worker is coming and visiting the parents. They're getting along in a different way because that initial trauma of separation didn't occur. And so you could still salvage a working relationship with those families. I see
Thank you.
Stacy's hand up. Sorry. Oh, Stacy, you're muted.
Stacy, you're on mute.
Sorry, I clicked the wrong, I didn't click both of them. It's a long meeting. Sorry about that. No, Adam, you're doing an amazing job with the safety plan, and I'm also a CASA, and so you're always dealing with the. Anyway, I wasn't going to talk to you, but thank you for doing what you're doing. I wanted to ask Jessica a question. Are you still here? Yes, there you are. I also wanted to introduce myself because I'm an enrolled tribal member of the Kickapoo Tribe of Kansas. And I'm also a Cherokee medicine woman. I've been enrolled, invited into that tribe as well. So you know what this is all about. I wanted to appreciate also the fact that you said the services you provide was one of them is a healing clinic, rather than saying it's a medicine clinic, which is a tribal understanding about that. It's not, healing encompasses a lot of stuff, including culture. You included that thing. You're talking also about being the ICW, working with ICW. As you know, with ICWA, that's a big part of it. With DCYF, do you have active efforts people involved with you too?
It depends what region we're working in. It varies. In our local region, we have our active efforts person. Um, they had left, and then I think we just hired someone else, or as I was on the hiring panel with them. But in other regions, we work with active efforts specialists, and they are a big help to the case and help move active efforts along. We're pretty tough when it comes to active efforts findings and our court cases, and we want them to be uh, the gold standard, basically, just to, so yes, we do. We do work with them.
Great, yeah, because to push DCYF to have active efforts mentality, it's really important. Also for FPS, do you have that support? Can you get funding from the state or from DCYF? I know around Seattle, they do have some funding services for tribal members for in-home services through the state. Do you have anything like that in your area?
Yes, we can contract with the state for, we can hold contracts for FPS with the state ourselves. And we just had a meeting about that recently, looking at doing family visit time, FPS, positive Indian parenting, and other things.
Great. So you have those kind of funding support for those things too.
Yes, yeah, and Office of Tribal Relations has a special person who's assigned to helping getting tribes this type of funding.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Ray, did you want to bring up something about FPS?
No, Jessica covered it great.
Okay, great. Claire.
One of the things I put in the chat that I wondered about, and it would be a great thing to follow up with, is what are the barriers that we're talking about are in statute and what barriers are in rulemaking? Because as I sit as a legislator, and there are a number of us on this board, the statutes we can change because there's a legislative nexus, if that makes sense, and there's things that are administrative barriers that perhaps are keeping things from happening. And then there's rulemaking, which happens inside the organization or the department that is not, does not have a legislative nexus. That's more of a conversation and with the department or with the agency around the why. So especially as we're thinking about again, the further down we can go on the prevention leg to provide service, the earliest entree is the best place, obviously, for us to be. So really would look forward to perhaps a follow-up and maybe having some conversation. And I too, deepest gratitude for the work you have done and you continue to do We are very well known for great policy, but not necessarily well known for funding great policy. And you are examples of great opportunities and ways that bring solution to families, but also have to be funded so families have access. And we have enough so families don't have to wait. So just to all of you today for a presentation, just thank you so much, and follow up if there's any legislative nexus that might be helpful as you move forward in your work.
Thank you, Senator.
Oh, just wanted to jump in real quick. We actually do have till 3:20 if there are any additional questions. So I just wanted to put that out there if board members have questions.
I suspect everybody is a little bit tired. It has been a little bit of a long meeting. I'm wondering whether people want another break, or should we just move on and power through and get done on potentially a little early?
Do we have public comment folk ready? Because that would be our next thing. So I'm wondering if we want to thank the panel and such for your time today. And if there is public comment ready, we could maybe do that. Or do people want to take, if you could maybe raise your body or your hand if you wanted to take, 10 minutes or something to stand up and run around whatever table you're sitting at. I know that our public comment probably won't go the full length of time, so what say you all?
I say power through.
Okay, do we have public comment folks ready to go?
Yes, I believe they're here,
okay.
yes.
Okay. So I just want to say officially thank you to the panel, and thank you, Katie, for being such a grand facilitator in that work, and just really deepest appreciation, and nothing about us without us. And we heard a lot about that today, that there's something about having somebody walk beside you that has actually walked those same pathways, maybe in a different space, but comes with the knowledge and experience about what it all means. And that perfection is always what one aims for. And that's a hard thing to come by when you're under stress. So just really want to thank you all. And with that, I'm going to pass it over to my colleague and co-chair, Dr. Diane Levy, and we're going to go from here. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you, Senator Wilson. And again, my thanks as well to all the panelists. And Katie, thank you for doing such a lovely job in facilitating. Sure appreciate all of you. Okay, now we're going to move on to public comment. After I read the board public comment statement, I will invite each speaker by name to unmute and speak. Please note there is now an on-screen timer, which will show you the remaining time for your comments, and we're sticking with 3 minutes. So the DCYF Oversight Board operates under state law, which outlines its authority and responsibilities. Specifically, the board is responsible for monitoring DCYF's progress towards achieving outcome measures, ensuring DCYF's compliance with applicable laws and policies, overseeing DCYF's performance and policies, offering advice and input to DCYF, the legislature, and the governor. While the board may consider information brought to its attention as part of a general oversight and monitoring role, it does not have the authority to investigate, direct, or alter DCYF's decisions in individual cases. Additionally, during public comment periods, neither the board nor meeting presenters can respond to comments beyond a simple acknowledgement. All public comments related to DCYF will be compiled and sent to DCYF leadership following the board meeting. To respect individuals who have sensitive stories to share or wish to discuss details of individual cases, we'd like to remind you that the board is subject to the Open Public Meetings Act. This means our meetings are open to the public, recorded and posted on the Oversight Board's website. It's also live streamed on TVW. Written public comments submitted in advance have already been sent to the board. So we had 2 written comments which have already been sent out. Let's see, yes, to ensure that we hear from as many individuals as possible, please try and keep your comments to 3 minutes. Thank you. So with that, we'll start with Sarah Aki. I'm sorry if I mispronounced your name. Feel free to correct it.
Thank you, Sarah Aki. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. I want to speak to House Bill 1227. The imminent physical harm standard is proving to be dangerous. Even waiting until substantial risk of physical harm exists is still waiting too long. All it takes is a simple look at the rising death rates of children involved with DCYF to see that. We cannot be putting parents first. Children should be removed from families of origin that are harming them to have a better chance. The only option here is to save their lives. This does not mean permanent removal. Reunification is still the goal. But leaving children in unsafe homes is reckless, careless, and irresponsible. Our jobs as adults is to protect them, and your jobs as board members is to ensure oversight and accountability of the very agency that is tasked as the first line of defense for that protection. Senator Christian said something earlier today that really resounded. It is really hard to be concerned about a child's well-being when they're dead. I want to propose to this board that each of you seek out dependency court days and times for your jurisdiction and go sit for 1 day. Listen to these cases. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. We appreciate you coming in today for your public comment. Our second presenter is Tracy Jefferson.
Hi, Tracy, you appear to be muted.
Tracy, we still aren't hearing you. Maybe what I'll do is go on to the next person, and then if we can figure out if Tracy is having troubles with audio, maybe we can come circle back around to you, Tracy, in a moment. Do you want to try it one more time, Tracy? Okay, so the next one is Jamie Williams.
Hello, everyone. I want to begin by addressing the earlier discussion regarding the inclusion of the DCYF secretary or a designee on this board. I really appreciate those of you who have acknowledged that this structure can create unnecessary conflict. I believe it was Lois and Pamela who spoke to the vulnerability of individuals who come before this board. And I'd actually like to speak to that vulnerability from a personal experience. As a board member at Fostering Change Washington, I have been very outspoken about my concerns regarding 1227. I regularly sign up for public comment. We host a podcast, and we consistently meet with legislators and lobbyists to raise awareness about the harms that we know this bill has caused. However, I am also a currently licensed foster parent, and that places me in an inherently vulnerable position. And because of my advocacy, I have faced formal complaints made against me solely due to my public opposition to 1227. When the DCYF secretary or a direct appointee sits on this board, it does significantly heighten the risk for licensed foster parents who wish to speak openly. And that risk is very real. It's happened to me, and it has a silencing effect. Now, it obviously doesn't silence me. But this is why you do not hear from more licensed foster parents during public comment. Many are aware of their vulnerability, and of who holds authority within this space. While some level of vulnerability will always exist when we're speaking out, the higher one moves up the chain of command, that greater greatens the perceived risk of retaliation for speaking out. Moving on, I do want to hit on a couple of other points. It's important to recognize that observing these cases from a courtroom as a defense attorney is very different from the experience of social workers in the field who are witnessing the real world consequences of 1227 every single day. We recently completed a two-part interview series with Jeanette Obelts, a union rep for Washington State social workers, and the information she shared from inside the system was deeply alarming. And additionally, fentanyl use began rising sharply in 2018, while the number of children entering care was declining. It was going down well before 1227 was enacted. So this makes it inaccurate to attribute today's record-breaking critical incidents solely to fentanyl. House Bill 1227 significantly limited DCYF's ability to remove children from homes where fentanyl use is present, which is why substance abuse now accounts for 75% of critical incidents, which is nearly a 20% increase since 1227. Thank you.
Thank you so much for coming in and giving your public comment. I'm going to circle back around. Is Tracy still on, and do we have audio on her yet? We do not hear anything, so I'm going to keep on going. Kathy Elkins is the next one.
Thank you. I'm unmuted, it appears. First of all, this is Kathy Elkins, and I am here to argue against changing any laws that protect children from being removed from families and for more oversight of DCYF and MedCon providers. I want to echo Sarah's idea about having members attend dependency court. I've attended a shelter care hearing and a dependency court, and I was absolutely appalled at the testimony of MedCon providers. There's a claim being spread to justify changing Washington law that DCYF is prevented somehow from removing children from in fentanyl cases. That claim is factually incorrect. There have been successful dependency filings involving just fentanyl use, and there is no published appellate decision where a Washington judge ruled against the state in a fentanyl-based dependency case. They're just not doing it. When DCYF presents credible evidence of risk, courts already act. The law is not the barrier. What we are just seeing is bad policy, and children are being hurt by inaction. But while this DCYF is falsely claiming its hands are tied in fentanyl cases, the agency continues to aggressively file dependency over minor short-lived injuries, sometimes lasting only days, based on poor quality MedCon work, even when they know the provider altered records fraudulently. Complaints to area administrators, ombudsman are not investigated. An email to an area administrator to report unethical or possibly criminal work by me was responded to the next morning, indicating that he would file it. As a school administrator, if I had done such a thing, I would have been probably put on administrative leave by the end of the day. The difference is there's no one to report to. I ask for change now, and I agree with all the people upset about the number of children that have passed away. I do not believe that it's because of the law. That's where we differ. I respect the work that Jamie's been doing. I just disagree on the cause of it. What we need to change is we must require audio recording of all substantive DCYF interactions. Every interaction in our case was either not recorded at all, completely inaccurate, or they recorded it and transcribed it later illegally. I ask that they require scripted communication so staff cannot say, make false assurances or off-the-cuff comments, and if they don't know an answer, they say, I don't know yet, and I'll follow up via email so there's a record. I also want to require medical attestations similar to what Georgia did, because they're probably the other state with such a problem with their child abuse pediatricians. The child abuse pediatricians material that they put out for training have portrayed DCYF workers who ask questions as foolish, including the use of a Big Lebowski image to mock their questioning. This discourages critical thinking and tells their staff that medical consultants cannot be wrong. That is not child safety, that's indoctrination. I also strongly disagree that a family's refusal of services should automatically result in removal of their child, and I'll speak about that next time.
Thank you, Kathy. Our next person is actually in person with Nicholas in Olympia, and that is Amanda Mills.
Just 1 second, Diane. Sorry, it looks like after that I did get Tracy unmuted. So
Got it.
after Amanda, we can switch back to Tracy.
Okay, great. Thank you for reminding. Go ahead, Amanda.
I'm sharing my personal experience not simply to recount what has happened to my family, but to bring light to a larger systemic problem, the inconsistent application of Washington's child welfare laws. My case illustrates how the Keeping Families Together Act can be enforced with extraordinary severity in the absence of safety risk, while its protections are unevenly applied across other families. What follows is a factual account intended to show how this inconsistency causes real harm to children, to families, and to the integrity of the law itself. The Keeping Families Together Act requires 5 things: a finding of imminent physical harm before removal, preservation of family and community ties, preference for relative placement, reasonable efforts to provide services, and a prevention-focused approach. I will briefly explain in factual and chronological order how DCYF has failed to meet each of these requirements in my case. First, the threshold for removal. At no point has there been evidence put forward or a professional assessment showing a risk of imminent physical harm perpetrated by me, nor did my children demonstrate any symptoms of being physically or emotionally abused by me during their intake. Over the past 18 months, no safety plan has been created and no specific parenting concerns have ever been clearly identified, though I've asked repeatedly so me and my therapist could immediately address them. I have no history of violence, substance abuse, emotional instability, or unsafe behavior. I am consistently active in self-development programs, and I am self-employed. Second, the failure to preserve parent-child bonds. Despite no finding that visitation posed a safety risk, my visits were systematically reduced over the last 6 months to just 1.5 hours per week in a DCYF office. Multiple visitation reports document my children crying and asking to come home. My original visitation supervisor was replaced against the judge's recommendation with a supervisor who self-proclaimed to be the big guns that DCYF brings in when a case isn't going the way they want, and proceeded to falsify reports that were later used in courts to restrict and reduce my visits to the 1.5 hours in the DCY office, a 3-hour round-trip drive once a week. My concerns about his psychologically abusive behavior and false reports were flippantly minimized and ultimately dismissed by the DCYF supervisor, social worker, and DGAL until the foster parent reported being gaslit by the same supervisor. Only then were my concerns acknowledged. However, the damage to my children was already done. To date, no corrective action has been taken to restore a meaningful and nurturing visitation environment. In addition, DCYF has refused to allow missed visitation hours to be made up, despite written confirmation and that those visits were missed due to supervisor unavailability, the supervisor canceling last minute, or the office being closed due to holiday hours. These cumulative visitation decisions have caused documented harm to my children, including emotional distress, PTSD diagnoses, and behavioral deterioration, effects that DCYF has minimized or failed altogether to report to court. Third, the failure to pursue relative placement. Although
Just so
state
you
law
know, Amanda, you were over time. Why don't you try and finish up in about a minute, okay?
Okay. All this to bring attention to the broader systemic concern. The level of effort, scrutiny, and resources applied to removing and keeping my children from me, despite the absence of any safety risk, stands in stark contrast to the cases in which infants and children have later died while remaining in a very high-risk, dangerous situations. If that same level of urgency and intervention were consistently applied where children are actually found in chronically neglectful environments, child fatalities would not continue to occur. Ongoing violation of the Keeping of the Families Together Act demonstrate how inconsistent interpretation and enforcement of the law undermines its stated purpose of protecting children and preserving families. Thank you.
Thank you for your public comment and coming in today. So we are going to circle back around to Tracy Jefferson, please.
Good afternoon, and thank you guys so much for the opportunity to speak today. I will try to be brief. I am deeply concerned that if what was shared today by LCYC stands true, and that the same threshold for removal is applicable to DCYF that they have been greatly successful with in protecting children, then we have a much bigger problem than the threshold of removal in the Keeping Families Together Act. And we have a systemic issue that is a child welfare emergency. I frequently hear in meetings that I attend and in conversations that I have with stakeholders around the state about how we need more parent supports and resources, but I rarely hear us talk about what are the child-centered resources that we are going to be offering in what is supposed to be a child welfare system. I frequently hear about outcomes being measured around reunification and achievement of permanency and reducing the number of children in care. However, I very rarely hear us talk about child-centered outcomes, such as, did we improve the rate of graduation for children who have experienced DCYF involvement? Did we reduce the rate of involvement in the criminal justice system for children who have had DCYF involved in their families? And I think regardless of where we go with legislature or with policies and procedures, if we can bring this back to a more child-centered focus, then the children will do better. I fully agree and support that children do better when they can be safely with their parents, and when parents are engaged, and when parents accept services that help them keep their children safe. I find it deplorable that we have a recent fatality report where there were 85 intakes, and we did not require anything from the parents or engage them in any services successfully or give them any indication that what they were doing was wrong until the day the child died. And then we gave them founded findings of neglect. That is a failure on our system. I look forward to continuing these conversations. And while I agree that a law does not directly kill children, I think this law had many unintended consequences that we are minimizing by saying parents need more services and forgetting about the children who are dying. And our data only looks at the children who are dying and nearly dying right now. We are not looking at the unintended and collateral damage that is happening to the siblings who have watched this occur in their homes.
Thank you so much, Tracy. We appreciate you coming in today and making your public statement. Nicholas, is there anybody else waiting, or are we completed?
That is everybody.
Okay, great. So at this point, I'm going to send it back to Lisha, and she's going to take us for the last few minutes here.
Great. Thank you so much, Dr. Levy. This has been a critical and a consequential meeting, and I'm so grateful to everyone for your active participation and engagement, and to our panelists and everyone who has been participating. I also want to thank the entire board for your passion and commitment to the board's work on behalf of children, youth, and families in Washington State. I also appreciate you bearing with me as I work my way through Robert's rules, and I can tell you that there will be training on my part. So before we close today, in probably a limited amount of time, excuse me, I'd love to hear one or two key takeaways that people had. Some examples of key takeaways could be what stood out for you as most important, what would you like more information about, what questions do you have about next steps? So I will open it up right now. And if people are too tired, that is okay. Okay.
I see Judge
Amamila's got her hand up.
Oh, I'm so sorry. Yes, Judge Amamilo.
No worries.
It's funny that we should have had this conversation today. I had the pleasure of meeting Zach this morning here in the office because he's out doing what the staffers do, reconning and getting the lay of the land by trying to put their thumb on the pulse for the people who have to make the laws, like Senator Wilson. So I appreciated that I was kind of primed today for listening and listening carefully. And one of the things that we talked about a lot of what we heard today from both sides. Also, in between, since last time I had a listening session with one of the groups that regularly attends. I forget the name is going off the top of my head right now. It starts with a K. Keeping Kids Safe or something like that.
Keeping families together.
Keeping families together. I think that's, I'm not sure, but I had a listening session with them. There's so much common concern, no matter the perspective or angle that people are coming from. But one of the things that is kind of getting left out, keeping kids safe. Yes. I think that's the one. Thank you, Danielle. But I think what I used to say as a parent's attorney was when I first was trying to assess what what the agency was doing, the common theme that just came analyze, but the common theme was they were mitigating liability because they were always under attack, under lawsuit or, some scandalous something in the news about what DCYF did or didn't do. When I first started, it was still DSHS, and then DCYF was carved out. There was this culture of mitigating exposure to liability. And that I don't know that culture is completely gone away, or if that culture can completely go away. That is part of what they are faced with, liability when something goes wrong that is actually in conflict with the full scope of what they could do. I agree with nearly everything that people have said about the foundations of their concerns. However, there is so much research to support that if social workers are properly resourced, if the supportive services provided by the organizations, the service, community service organizations are provided for by legislative funding, if the things that support families are funded and social workers are properly resourced with proper caseloads and time to develop a trusting relationship with families. I'm a career defense attorney. I get nowhere with my client if I don't develop a trusting relationship first. And you're talking about walking into people's lives and becoming the parent of their children. That is a really big deal. And social workers just, my understanding over the years is they just didn't have the time. They don't have the time sometimes. And that creates a disconnect. That creates a danger. And they're getting information. They have things that they want to do in the social worker handbook that's available to them that their hires are telling them they can't do. And they're limiting, and that could be geographical. Geographically, I've learned that in some areas, social workers only get to use this much of the handbook. In other areas, they get to use more of the handbook. And those things limit the ability of families to make progress because there's that element undercurrent of mitigating liability. Like, what if something goes wrong? So I just want us to be mindful of that. And we have to understand that these are the families that are the fringe of our society, right? They're the fringe of our world. And if, just like with any quilt, when the fringes start to fray, the middle isn't so safe anymore. We're not so safe anymore if we don't take care of them. We can't just say, oh, we just put them over there to the side and say, oh, well, we we have to think differently. And I know it's frustrating to people when children are put in harm's way. But there's so many things children get put in harm's way every day. The number one, what cause of death is car accidents and gunshots. You know, we're, on the regular. So it's just that what we do in this world that we're in right here is got a big spotlight and a lot of passionate advocacy from every perspective. But I don't want it to get lost that mitigating liability is an undercurrent. But if you really put the supports, divert the funds, I mean, a lot of money is being spent to uphold the system. I think part of what we're feeling is a knee-jerk reaction from the impacts of fentanyl. We were on track to deal with the ravages of substance abuse. I mean, we just had this whole nation, whole towns wiped out for prescriptive opioids. Whole towns wiped out across the nation, and then it became a medical emergency. Prior to that, prior to this prescription, it wasn't a medical emergency. So it was a crime. It was criminal behavior. So I really want us to understand that we need to focus on what the evidence-based research tells us, and we need to put the focus and the attention on where it's at. And then I think a final thing that I want to say about the last speakers, the difference in how 1227 is applied from the department's perspective. One of the things that when we get a case history, we get what brought the case for shelter care, and then we get the history of department involvement. And we see all of those contacts that happened prior in a petition, right? So why do they get to have 15 contacts and they still have the decision? They still have the authority to decide whether or not to file. Why not? Why isn't there a limit on when the department doesn't have the choice but to bring it to the court for the court to decide? So there's a lot of discussion that needs to be had, but it's hard not to point finger. It's hard for some folks not to point finger when it is such a heart-wrenching topic, but it's a heart-wrenching topic for all of us. And I really want to maintain objectivity and just to not lose sight of the things that really do matter. So that's what I want to say.
Thank you so very much, Judge Almamilo. I really appreciate your comments. I see Shelley Willis has her hand up.
Thank you. I agree with Judge Amamillo. A lot of money is being spent on legal fees and intervention services, and I think perhaps disproportionately with prevention services. I'm still learning our tasks here, but I've been in social services for a long time now, and we certainly aren't seeing fewer cases of kids being hurt at all. We're certainly seeing more, and to have so few dependencies, it feels to me like part of our task is to look at why aren't these kids moving through and getting the supports that they need, and what can we do to address that? I know it's a lot less expensive to raise healthy kids than it is to address the trauma for youth and adults later on, and I'd like to learn more about the why, and thank you.
Thank you so much, Shelley. I really appreciate your comments as well. Any other comments or thoughts as we wrap up the debrief? Okay, I'm looking at everyone. Okay, great. I'm going to turn it back to Senator Claire Wilson. Just want to thank you all again. The engagement at this meeting has been outstanding. Thanks so much.
Thank you. And I'll just say to you, Lisha, let's go for the informal Robert's Rules of Order so you don't have to memorize the book, because I think we can find a mid spot where we're kind of following some kind of order, but I don't think I'm ready to have a gavel quite yet. So we can kind of chat about that. I love it. That was kind of a joke, just trying to give a little levity here. But I just want to thank all of you. It is late. It's been a long day. But just really thanks so much. And I really want to say thank you to Annie and Adam and Heather and Ray and Jessica and Dr. Stoner for being here today, and for Katie being a great facilitator of the panel, and just your willingness to learn and maybe deepen not only knowledge, but also your wonders about what it is and how it is we can make a change. And just lastly, want to remind folks our next board meeting is January 15th, and it's at our regularly scheduled time, 9 to 1. Myself want to wish everyone a safe and happy holiday, and make sure you stay away from flood zones if that's your geographic area. And just please take care and pass it on to Co-Chair Levy for the end.
The thing that strikes me is always is that everybody has the same desire to keep kids and families safe and healthy and growing, and everybody comes at it potentially from different angles, but I always come back to the fact that it's people really want to see these kids do well. And I think that's why we're all involved with this group. That's why we're all on this board. So thank you all for staying with us. Oh, we're getting out 15 minutes early. That's pretty good. All right.
Yeah.
Everybody have a wonderful holiday season.
Thanks all.
Thank you, everyone. Happy holidays.
Happy holidays.
The first